Welcome, welcome. We switched places. Grey Waste Tim is back. I thought I'd give him the special spot. Say hello, Grey Waste Tim.
Hello, ladies and unladies. Happy Mother's Day.
Yes, happy Mother's Day. Thank you, Tim. I was gonna forget. I've reminded myself 5 times to remember to say it, but yes, happy Mother's Day to Nissa and Mother Moon and Anissa, the mother of Cat and Daenerys and all of the mothers in the chat. Hello, friends. Hello. And so yes, we are here I thought we'd do something fun. Since Tim was back, I thought I would surprise him and just pick a random topic. Tim, what do you think about talking about some Blackfyres and Jon Connington?
I am always ready to talk Blackfyres and Jon Connington.
I am, of course, kidding. We are. Tim has sent me his notes. We are well prepared with the presentation. So here's how we're going to do it, folks. Here's the deal. The Sixth Blackfyre Rebellion, aka the thing that Jon Con and fAegon and Illyrio and Varys are cooking up, is also the second Dance of the Dragons, potentially, possibly. It's it depends on if fAegon gets a dragon, but the book A Dance with Dragons seems to be setting up the struggle between Dany and young Griff, aka Rhaegar's fake son, probably, definitely, whom we all call fAegon. You know, the guy with the blue hair. Pick up my pieces, dwarf. That guy. Now, Tim and I did a Killer fAegon stream a few months ago, and that was mostly a character study of fAegon the man. What we are going to do today is we are going to set the table with the whole thing. We're going to go over... I'm going to speed run Tim through the history of the first 5 Blackfyre Rebellions, and just enough so that we can draw some parallels to the characters, the merry band of rebels that we have assembling for the 6th Blackfyre Rebellion. And this will also allow us to draw some parallels to the Dance of the Dragons, which of course is the Hot Dragon plot line. House of Flying Dragon Houses. Hey, Minty. My #1 mod. Good to see you in the chat, Swagger Dagger. I deputized a bunch of people a couple weeks ago. We had a couple trolls and I made like 6 new mods. So we are going to give you the quick history of the Blackfyres to set up the fAegon plotline. We're going to center this around Jon Connington. Shout out Quinn the GM. Jon Connington, greatest character in fantasy, as he says. We like Quinn the GM around here. We like his sense of humor. Jon Connington is quite the character, and we are going to dive into his 2 chapters and read a bunch of it. We're going to sort of just skim through it and pull out the tasty bits. And we are going to sort of, just try to frame where this is going. This is basically a Winds of Winter predictions video. So we are going to build all this together to talk about where this is going. And we are going to try hard to do a little more than just cover the well-trod ground of, the obvious next steps of what fAegon's going to do. We're going to try to get loose with the speculation, reasoned speculation, and try to think about the different ways that George could take this. Because we know as a gardener, he gives himself options and then sort of develops the plot as it goes. So we're going to talk about some symbolic foreshadowing for Jon Con and fAegon. And Jon Con is an interesting character. We mentioned him a little bit on the villains tourney, and we mentioned him a little bit when talking about Tywin, as far as people emulating Tywin in all the wrong ways. We mentioned that last week on our Lannister stream, and that is Jon Connington has a "What would Tywin Lannister do" bracelet that he wears, and it's very bad. So that's kind of the structure of what we're going to do here. So we've got, we're going to do the basics of the fAegon Blackfyre theory, but we've covered that before, so we're not going to wallow in the details of it. We're just going to sort of sum it up a little bit and talk about the interesting parts. And I've got some quotes ready here, and Tim's got this thing that he sent me, pages and pages, 27 pages, 137. No, I'm kidding. But yes, this is the summary of the events, and I'll go ahead and actually make this just a little bigger so we can read it more easily. That did not do what I wanted. I'll just move this. There we go. A little more. And almost. So close. So close to
Oh,
having it.
that's. I just want to point out downtown Cloudy Brown. His 3 little kittens, all Stormborn, named after the. That's awesome. Congrats, downtown. Take care of those kitties.
All right, so Tim, I am going to be the stand-in for the audience. I estimate that my knowledge of the Blackfyre rebellions, if you were to just wake me up, which we just did, and ask me to sort of recount them, I'd be like, I know that the first one was Daemon, and one of them was in the Dunk and Egg books. That was either 2 or 3. I think it was 3. And then I know the War of the Ninepenny Kings is the 5th one. So that's about where I'm at with it. And I think that's probably where a lot of people are, like, having read Dance. Like, it's hard, not all of us are Blackfyre enthusiasts like you, Tim. So I will be the stand-in for the audience, and I will sort of ask you the questions. We will treat you as the expert, since you are literally the Blackfyre expert.
Yeah.
But first, real quick, let's shout out your channel, Grey Waste Tim. You've been doing some good work lately. You did chapter rereads the last 2 weeks on Tyrion's first 2 Dance chapters with Illyrio, which are, a big part of this whole plot line. So this is all extra fresh in your mind. But yeah, check out Grey Waste Tim if you haven't already. I'm sure all of my regulars have subscribed. Yeah, Tim Blackfyre, Minty, that's it, exactly. Just rename your channel Tim Blackfyre. Of course, when you got your cat, you gave your cat a choice of if he wanted to be Daemon Blackfyre or Daemon Targaryen, right? And somehow he chose Daemon Targaryen. Is that correct?
Yeah, because when I first adopted him, and my partner at the time, she was like, "Okay, I'm fine with getting a cat as long as it's a black cat." And then I was like, "Okay," so I was thinking Daemon Blackfyre, and then when I got to the shelter and saw that little white tip on the end of his tail, I was like, "Oh, hey, it's a little flame tip." This whole Daemon Blackfyre thing is building itself here. But then I brought him home, and I'm like, no, you know what? I'm actually going to give you the choice. You're going to be Daemon, but I laid out my copies of Knight of the Seven Kingdoms and Fire and Blood, and I asked him, are you Targaryen or are you Blackfyre? And he walked over and put his little paw on Fire and Blood. So I was like, okay, I guess you're the rogue prince. All right, this works out just as well.
He sensed the energy in the house and needed to balance it out, Tim.
He's like, no, you're really pushing this Blackfyre thing on me.
Yeah, we need to keep an eye on these traitors here. We will have confirmation that fAegon is a Blackfyre, with the closest thing be if he wielded the Blackfyre sword. Well, that is an interesting point. Like, is the Blackfyre sword really a symbol of Targaryen legitimacy at this point, or is it proof that he's a Blackfyre? Like, they're going to try to sell that one. And we do believe that Illyrio has it and has sent it with Jon Con in one of those chests. Your thoughts?
I would argue that it is a symbol of Blackfyre legitimacy, because Aegon IV literally uses it to legitimize Daemon Blackfyre. When he knights him with Blackfyre. That is when he is no longer Daemon Waters. He now becomes Daemon Blackfyre in that moment. And then he gifts the sword to him. So from that moment on, when Aegon IV knights Daemon and acknowledges him as his child, from that point on, the Blackfyre sword became a House Blackfyre symbol.
I would agree. And everyone kind of knows it disappeared with them. So maybe they'll claim to have rediscovered it at Dragonstone or in the Red Keep or something. But yeah, we'll see. I'm interested in that one. As far as confirmation goes, we will get into that. Some of that has to do with Dany's vision. So shout out to Clowny Brown. Shout out all my regs in the chat. What's up, guys? Real quick, we do have t-shirts. I haven't mentioned it in a couple weeks. We owe you a new one. But we do have several interesting designs at our Bonfire store. The link is below, including Reading Rhaegar. That one. And we've got Praise Garth and Nana Vagar and something with my name on it even. So, yeah. We should get some sort of Blackfyre traders / loyal enthusiast. Don't say loyalist. Something. Anyway. So, Tim, first Blackfyre Rebellion.
Yep.
This is the important one to cover, because kind of all the other subsequent ones build off of the first one. The first one sets up this bifurcation of the kingdom. As we've seen on House of the Dragon, like there's always a little bit of tension when you have multiple princes and stuff, and you know, it's like we're brothers and sisters, but also if you die, I get to be king next. So, you know, hopefully you don't fall from your horse or anything there, you know, that kind of stuff. So this is a different, we don't really exist in that mindset anymore. But obviously in medieval times and in many parts of the world with patriarchal descent and things like that, yeah, this is a thing. You have brothers killing each other to take the throne. It's not an uncommon plot point. And so on House of the Dragon, we've seen how it happens. Viserys, you know, can have a son, so he names his daughter the heir, but then he remarries because it's not good to just have one heir. You want spares. And he ends up creating a whole second family of claimants and then ignores the building tension and dies. So with the first Blackfyre Rebellion, it kind of starts with Aegon the Unworthy, doesn't it, Tim?
Yeah, because in my timeline of events here, I have everything scoped out from the year that Daemon Waters, later to be Daemon Blackfyre, is born. And then all the other major events, also the birth of other bastard children that are going to play a role in here. Bittersteel, because for the first couple of years of his life, Daemon Waters does not know who his father is. His mother, Dana the Defiant, she refuses to name who the father is. It's not until he turns 14 when Aegon IV acknowledges him that the truth comes out. So, for a long time, like he just goes about as being this bastard. He knows he's the son of a princess. He knows he's part of the royal family, but he has no idea who his dad is. And in the meantime, Aegon the Unworthy is basically having sex with all the other women that he can and pumping out even more bastards. So by the time that he even acknowledged Daemon, there's already Bittersteel and Bloodraven and all these other siblings that he never knew about are already out and about in the world.
So what's the order of birth of the major bastards? Who's the oldest? Bittersteel, right?
No, Daemon's the oldest.
Oh, Daemon. Oh, you've got it right here. Okay, so 170, Daemon is born. 172, Bittersteel is born. When's Bloodraven? 175. Shara Seastar comes along when?
She's a lot later.
She's younger. Okay. Well, she's got to be.
She's around 184 because she's born around the same time that Aegon dies. So.
Okay.
Yeah, there's about a 14, 15.
Oh, right. Yes. She's last. She's last. Yes. Okay. I remember now. So interesting thing about this, I guess this is getting a little bit ahead, but yeah, Daemon is not like, he doesn't really come across as the spearhead of the rebellion, more as the figurehead of the rebellion. Isn't that right, Tim?
Yeah, because Daemon, for his part, in the beginning was not interested, never gave an inkling that he was interested in leading a rebellion, but it is said that he was prone to flattery. So what happens is all of the lickspittles who are unhappy with Daeron II, when Aegon IV dies, and his trueborn, if we take it at his word, Daeron II, Daeron the Good comes in. Daeron cleans house. He kicks out the corrupt council members, all the people who got their positions or their points of office by giving Aegon IV their daughters. That was the thing with Aegon IV. You could buy your way into office with sex. Right. Offer up your daughters, get a dragon egg. That's how the Butterwells get their dragon egg.
And real quick, I'm sorry, let me interrupt you real quick. I have got a Harrenhal video coming this week if I work very hard, which I'm going to. And we're going to talk about that. Aegon IV and I guess it would be the Lostons, right? Yeah. Okay. Yep. There's some similar stories with Harrenhal, the Harroways and the Lostons and the Strongs and stuff. But yeah, that's exactly right. Like Aegon the Unworthy, he's like him and Maegor the Cruel are kind of the two worst kings. Maybe Aerys, if you want to say it's a three-way tie. Yeah, I guess it's a three-way tie probably. But they're all different kinds of bad king. Maegor is an insane psychopath with a dragon. He's got a lot of martial prowess. He's very violent. his solution to everything is ultra-violence. Aegon the Unworthy is not a martial man. He is a corrupt man, and he is venal and I guess lusty. What's he say? He's given to vices. That's the word. So he basically, he would trade political favors that have incredible value, or things like a dragon's egg, just to like sleep with somebody's virgin daughter or take somebody as a paramour. And that's how, like, he promoted somebody to Hand of the King because he wanted the guy's daughter. So that's the kind of thing that's been going on, is what Tim's alluding to. So, of course, literally, when Daeron takes the throne, Daeron the Good, literally every position has to be changed. I mean, you can't trust the bellhop, the door guy, the treasurer, the jailer. They've all got to go.
Yeah, and Daeron will learn that, because for the first little while, he'll keep a Hand of the King that his father promoted, Lord Butterwell. But when the first Blackfyre Rebellion launches off, Lord Butterwell sends one son to fight for the Targaryens and one son to fight for the Blackfyres. He tries to keep a foot in each camp. And it's like, this is your Hand of the King, and even he is not fully committed to your cause. Like, so Daeron learns, like, I can't give any of these guys the benefit of a doubt. They all gotta go.
Well, so when we talked about Maegor, which we did three-hour streams on Maegor the Cruel, went through every word written about Maegor. And of course, one of the things that you immediately come away from is like, Maegor is a violent psychopath, but he is an overreaction to Aenys, who was a complete pushover. And we have to acknowledge that being king of Westeros, or queen, you're a barbarian warlord, essentially. And that's what feudal monarchies ultimately come down to, especially when you're talking about a dragon-enforced monarchy. But in any case, the point is, like, people have to... Like, Jaehaerys is probably the best example of a blend. He didn't do everything right, but a blend of, like, just rule, but also, like, I do have a dragon and I do mean business. Like, when he had to... who's the Baratheon that he had to, like, sort of take by the collar? The older one that was Hand of the King. When Jaehaerys became king.
Oh, what was...
Which Baratheon was that? I forget which one. But it's the one...
So many names you got to remember and remember.
They make you swear and swear, yeah. But the point is, like, Jaehaerys knew how to show his dragon when he needed to, but did not... Rogar, thank you.
Rogar.
Who's kind of a pig. Like, he needed to be put in check. So, like, Jaehaerys could do that. So you have to... It's, again, different mindset than we have now. But, like, Aegon the Unworthy is so corrupt and given to his vices that he actually skews more towards Aenys as far as being weak, being a king that people don't respect. And the Butterwell example is a perfect example of that. Yeah, the guy, you would never play both sides with Maegor or Jaehaerys, really, or Aegon the Conqueror. You know what I mean? Or Visenya, for God's sake.
Yep, and that's why Daeron, for his part, because Daeron, even though he's seen as bit of a pushover, he has strong sons to back him up. What really props up Daeron is having Baelor Breakspear and Maekar, the hammer and the anvil. Like, whatever deficiencies he has in strength, his sons can help prop him up, and that's what makes them such a good ruling sect. And that's why it's such a tragedy when the tourney at Ashfall when we lose Baelor Breakspear at the tourney at Ashfall later on in the Dunk and Egg series. As for Aegon IV, like, in the beginning, he starts out very promising. He actually is a strapping young lad. He's got he's a handsome Targaryen prince. He actually fights alongside his cousin Daeron I in the Dornish War of Conquest. It's actually where he comes across some of these mistresses that he'll take during his time, but he is putting in the effort. That was because Aegon IV is very much a Henry VIII parallel. And just like that, Henry VIII started off as very, very strong, very handsome, very charismatic, a lot like Robert Baratheon. But the older he got, the worse he got, the more corrupt he got. And that's when we see like more Aegon, the Henry VIII we know more better as the fat guy who had so many wives put to death. That is Aegon the Fourth. And I think Aegon the Fourth, like, the more corrupt he gets is also like the fatter he gets. So it's like George is linking the corruption and the obesity, the morbid obesity that he's packing on go hand in hand. As far like as he gets older, he gets worse, and he also gets fatter and uglier and further away from that promising prince that he started out as.
Yeah, Aries is the same way. He's very charismatic and well liked at first, and then it's just turns into the crazy guy. All right, cool. So we've got Aegon the Unworthy, and he takes the throne. It says potentially he might have poisoned his father Viserys II, who is the second child of Rhaenyra and Daemon, by the way. So is there much, what do you think? Is there much to that, or is it just, they kind of say that every time almost?
Yeah, they say that, but like, I wouldn't say it's not something he would do as soon as his father, because once Aegon the Third passed, when Aegon the Third's sons pass without heir and all that's left are daughters, and everyone, and there's another council meeting because they're like, oh crap, we got another, as usual, we have another Targaryen succession crisis. What do we do? And then they were like, no, we're not going through this again. Just give it to his brother. He's been hand for over 20 years now. Just make him king. But I do think that when that happens, when Viserys II is made king, that's when you can see like his son Aegon the Fourth is probably looking at like the dollar signs will just form in his eyes, and he's like, okay, I'm only one step away. Before, I was so far away from the line of succession when my uncle and my cousins were alive, but now it's my dad. He's literally the one thing stopping me. I think we need to speed this up.
So how old approximately was Viserys when he died, and how old was Aegon Unworthy?
So Aegon,
when he took the throne.
So Aegon is...
And you have to remember how George is writing Fire and Blood. He doesn't decide. He enjoys writing the multiple choice. So a lot of these things, it's not like there's a secret answer written down somewhere that like, yes, he did poison him, or no, he didn't. George just writes it the way that we get history, and we don't know the truth of these rumors. So a lot of the times, if there's a rumor, there's probably something to it. And there are other occasions when you can tell that there's a clue that we're given that, like, the rumor's not true. But it is fun to try to pick it apart. So
Aegon the Fourth is born in 135, takes the throne in 172. So he's about 37 when he becomes king. Old enough to know better by that point. And his father, Viserys dies at age 50.
50. Okay, so that's, and what is the cause of death?
Viserys was. It is believed that Viserys had in time, as he was just, a sudden illness led to his death in 172. So it's like the way it's written is just like he got sick. It came out of nowhere. So he's been hand for over 2 decades at this point, but when he's finally given the crown, he only has it for a year, and then all of a sudden he just gets sick and dies. So, like, the way it's written, it does sound rather suspicious.
Yeah, there's some eyeball. Exactly, Abigail. Exactly. So, and how old was the Unworthy?
So he's 37 when this happens.
Okay, that's right about the age when you're kind of like, all right, Dad. So he had him really young. That's not much of an age gap.
Viserys was only 13 when he fathered his first child.
Smarter to wait a little bit sometimes.
I mean,
all right. Yeah. Well, so, and then of course, the rumor is that King Daeron, who takes it. Well, is there Right. Okay. So Sir Morgil Hastwick, Sir Morgil Hastwick begins spreading rumors that Prince Daeron is actually the bastard child of Aemon the Dragon Knight. Rumors may have actually been started by Aegon himself, as he and Daeron have been quarreling over the king's plans to war against Dorne and the family of Daeron's bride. Aemon kills Sir Morgil in a trial by combat to disprove the notion.
Yeah.
So Aemon the Dragon Knight and Nerys, they are, to me, they come across. Did we touch on Euron yet? No. We will mention Euron at the very end when we get to the predictions part, but we're in the heart of Blackfyre history, so we're not talking about Euron. So Aemon the Dragon Knight and Nerys seems like it's supposed to be written as like the courtly love, like the romance that wanted to be, but both of them are too chaste and sworn to their vows to consummate it. Almost everybody consummates it in this story. I think this is like the one example of the just what I said. But what's your read on that? So, like, I give these rumors about as much credibility as when the Lannisters were like, yeah, Stannis fathered Shireen on his or the fool is actually Shireen's father or something.
Yeah.
That's how I.
For me, I actually do like the idea that Aemon the Dragon Knight is the true father.
You do like that idea?
Yeah, just because it's again George wanted to write about the heart in conflict with itself. So Aemon the Dragon Knight being held up as the pinnacle of what a Kingsguard should be, the virtuous knight, one of the strongest in the realm. If he succumbed to baser instincts and had sex, that is the sort of like litigious thing that George would just love to throw out, because it gives Aemon the Dragon Knight a shade of gray in that.
Yeah,
in
but
that
Ned didn't really have a bastard. Like, it's the same with Ned, but like, no, Ned really did stick to his honor. In fact, he's so honorable that he let everyone think that he was dishonorable in order to take care of his sister's kid. The chat, William Daniels thinks it's obvious that Aemon the Dragon Knight is Daeron's father. So there you go. That's the fun thing about Fire and Blood, though.
Yeah, because as I've said like numerous times, it sets up this Blackfyre Rebellion. If Daeron is actually the bastard son of Aemon, then it sets up the first Blackfyre Rebellion, not as a war between the true-born son fighting the bastard pretender claimant. It becomes a war of two bastards. Which one do you side with? And that stacks up right with the idea of the Targaryen line not even coming from Aegon the Conqueror, like you and me have discussed, like the idea that maybe Maegor and Aenys the First were not Aegon the Conqueror's children. If the Targaryen line is based solely on the maternal line and then gets broken up again by this bastard fight, then it's like it really like it starts to become like, where is the true legitimacy here? And that's like a question I think George would love to ask, is like, where really is the, like, how do we hold up who should really be king? Is it really based on just who your daddy was, or is there more to it? Because there's so much shades of gray and these waters are so muddied already.
What's William Daniels? This sounds like a crackpot theory. Daemon is Baelor's son? Baelor the Blessed? What?
Oh no. Baelor the Blessed locked his sisters up in the maiden vault so that he would not be tempted. I do believe that man died a virgin. He was... Yeah.
So a couple of people have pointed out that we have the same haircut and facial hair. My beard's a little thinner than yours at the moment, but they're trolling. Yeah, help me, Sean. I need you out here to defend me, Sean. I'm like, what's going on? I'm a little slow today. The chat is on one, too. I love you guys. I can't necessarily respond to everything that's in the chat. I'm sorry. People are asking me to comment on all kinds of things. Okay. So I got to look. There's a lot of Blackfyre information in my head right here. I got to stick with Blackfyres. Okay. So, okay. So Morgil Hastwick spreading rumors, and he is killed in a duel by Aemon the Dragon Knight, which you could say lends credibility to the rumors. But I mean, if you're saying these things in court at a certain point, like, yeah, this is what happens in this society. They call you to defend your words, and then you have to fight. So that could be, yeah. To become a member, you just click the join button next to the subscribe button, and I think it's visible on mobile as well. It's definitely there on the desktop. Okay, so then we've got. So let's talk about the Dornish part of this, because this is really the origin of the war. And part of it is the closest thing to like racial prejudice that we see in the story, right? Like we've talked about this with the Velaryons and stuff. Like Jalabar Joe doesn't suffer from, like, they don't call him names at court in King's Landing. They don't make fun of him because of his skin color or because of the cultural traditions of the Summer Islanders. There's nothing like, some of the racism that we see in modern society. However, of course, there is like tribalism and, a little bit of prejudice and stuff. And it's mostly the Dornish who get it because they are a little bit different from everybody else. They have this Rhoynish infusion, heavy Rhoynish population migration 700 years ago. The Rhoynish are like Mediterranean, olive-skinned, Spanish, Moorish, approximately, as far as how they're described. You know how it is with fantasy civilizations, are loosely parallel to real civilizations, but you can never take it too tightly or whatever. But yes, there is this anti-Dornish sentiment. And so some of this is political as well. So is Dorne was just brought into the kingdom recently, right? Like that's Baelor the Blessed. When did that happen?
No, that's Daeron the Good. So what happens is that after the Dance of the Dragons, when Daeron the First, he gets it in his head, okay, we have no dragons. We need a big show of force. We're finally going to take Dorne. And that's when he launches this new Dornish War of Conquest. It does not work out. Baelor the Blessed is left then, who's like, okay, I got to mend the wound here. And Dorne remains independent for a couple more decades. Until Aegon IV is like, no, I'm going to conquer Dorne. And that's when he builds the wooden dragons that spit wildfire. But then they all end up breaking down in the Prince's Pass. Like,
and Aegon IV, that is
the unworthy.
The unworthy. Okay.
Yeah. He tries to conquer Dorne with wooden dragons, but this is what causes the big fight between him and Daeron, because Daeron at this point is married to Mariah Martell. And he's like, look, Dad, you're warring against my wife's family. That's your daughter-in-law. And that's what causes like this first big schism between them. And it's after that is when we start getting like all these rumors of Daeron's not really Aegon's son. And it comes as them fighting, squabbling over this war that Aegon wants to launch to try and take Dorne by force. I mean, nothing comes of it. They don't even make it to Dorne before those wooden dragons break down, but still. That's what's causing this. So when Aegon dies and Daeron takes the throne, he's already married to a Dornish woman. He is able to then bring Dorne into the fold with a second marriage pact, and that is when he marries his sister, who is named Daenerys, to his wife's brother, Mors Martell. And then that is what brings Dorne into the fold. It's brought in through a marriage pact.
So are you saying that Daeron, when he was a prince, married a Martell, and then his crazy dad went to war with Dorne?
Tried to go to war with Dorne, even though his son and his daughter-in-law his son was married to a Dornish woman. He still tried to fight Dorne.
Okay, I didn't remember that because it makes so little sense.
Well,
That's
Aegon
really like, wow. Okay.
Well, trying to take wooden dragons that spit wildfire through the Red Mountains doesn't make sense either, but he tried.
No. Why does an 8 foot tall Wookiee live on Endor with 2 foot tall Ewoks? That does not make sense. Also,
Yeah.
so
If the dragons spit wildfire, you must acquit.
so we if the in the forest, yes, you want to quit before they light the whole thing on fire. So when does that Dornish? When does that thing happen with the wildfire dragons? Is that on here?
Uh,
I don't see it. No, because that's Aegon the Unworthy.
yeah, that's Aegon the Unworthy.
Okay.
I don't have the exact year for that one because I was just kind of pinpointing when the bastards were born and stuff. But yeah, it is something that happens.
So this Daenerys is the younger sister of Daeron.
Yes.
Okay. So Daeron marries who?
Daeron marries Mariah Martell, and his sister Daenerys marries her brother Mors Martell.
Okay. And then so Daeron and Mariah Martell, they have Baelor Breakspears, their son, correct?
Yeah.
And Maekar.
Yeah. Yes.
And then Maekar is Egg's dad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There you go. So because they talk about Egg being Dornish and how he can take the heat and stuff like that. So that's that's okay.
And that becomes another one of these big points when it comes to the Dornish backlash is Baelor Breakspear having more of a Dornish look and not the Targaryen features. If Baelor Breakspear had taken the crown, he would have been the first king to not have the traditional Valyrian look. He had more olive skin and darker black hair.
So this is right. So this is the thing is like the dragons are gone, and so the Targaryen looks are almost more important now. Like the Targaryens are clinging to any symbol of their we're definitely God people. We're totally above you, and none of you all are fit to sit the throne. It's got to be a Targaryen. So that's partly why, like, why Baelor's like, this guy doesn't really look like a king to me. Is there anybody else up there we can talk to? Someone with silver hair, perhaps.
And that's why in the Sworn Sword, when Sir Eustace Osgrey refers to Daemon as the king who bore the sword, without dragons, we have to look for other symbols of legitimacy. So the Valyrian swords, Blackfyre and Dark Sister, become more important than they were before because now they become the new symbols of legitimacy.
Yes, and that is why it was foolish to
give it away to a bastard.
Only only silver-haired Targs ever get the throne. That's pretty much the case. But that's why Baelor is such like an important character to consider in the context of that, because he so clearly would have been a good king, right? Like his character shines through like a beacon in the Hedge Knight. So yeah, of course, George is not a race supremacist, but is rather providing commentary on the concept. We've got Bloodraven is born. So this anti-Dornish sentiment is just kind of chilling. But when...
Yeah, more than the racial aspect, what really sets people off against the Dornish is the concessions that were made. Because they're first of all, people are mad that they're brought in through a marriage pact, especially after all of these Dornish... After the young dragon and then Aegon the Fourth's attempt, it's like, look, we've lost 3 wars, and now you're going to bring them in through peace? So the more martial people, the more, like, especially like the martial lords are like, they see this as an insult, as in, no, if we were going to conquer them, then we need to conquer them. You can't bring them in through peacefully.
Yeah, because basically the Dornish are never humbled. They're allowed to retain this pride that they never bowed. They never knelt. And they never were broken. Yeah.
The Martells are allowed to keep the title of prince and princess, unlike everyone else. When Aegon the Conqueror came around, like Torrhen Stark, you're not king in the North anymore. You're Lord Stark, but you're not. Everyone lost their title of king in the original conquest, but when Dorne is brought in, they still get to call themselves prince and princess. So there's jealousy over that. It's like, well, why does he get to be a prince and I only get to be a lord? Like it sounds stupid, but it really is people mad over that.
They
And then
won that. They mostly won that right when they were able to hold out against
the
the
dragons.
dragons. Yeah, that's how
Yeah.
they won that. So it's like they did pay the price, but of
Yeah.
course, yeah, people are jealous and stuff like that.
And they're allowed to, Dorne is allowed to impose its own taxes and tax, like it's no longer, it's not the crown's collectors going to Dorne to collect taxes the way they're going around to like the Westerlands or the Reach. Like the Dornish retain the right for their own taxes. So it's like no taxation without representation. Like they're really, that's thrown in there. But it does become, it becomes a point of contrast to the rest of the kingdoms of, you're giving them way too much. You're giving them these extra rights that we don't have to bring them in. Why are you and they see it as favoritism, especially too with Daeron being married to a Dornish woman. And then it's also said he brings Dornishmen into his court. So after he cleans house, some of these offices that he's giving might have gone to more Dornishmen. We don't know until we get a full detailing of who sat Daeron the Good small council. But one can assume that there were at least a couple Dornish on there.
One would assume, yes, that's how it works. Some bitter ass lords, but yeah, that's how the power game goes. So this is brewing. You got this thing about the Brackens. I don't think that affects anything too much. Aemon the Dragon Knight dies defending his brother from an assassination attempt by the brothers of Terrence Toyne. Oh, that's why it matters. Okay.
Yeah, because Aegon's seventh mistress is the younger sister of his fifth. So Bittersteel's mother and his grandfather, Lord Bracken, they groom her younger sister to be Aegon's next
right.
mistress.
That's
but
right.
By this point, Aegon has become really, really fat and bloated, and she is not attracted to him. She finds comfort with a member of the Kingsguard named Terrence Toyne. Aegon IV catches them in bed together, and so he has Terrence Toyne dismembered limb by limb right in front of her.
Nice.
And so his brothers vow revenge, and they try to assassinate the king.
And so Miles Toyne is the Smiling Knight, right?
No, that would be there's Simon Toyne, who leads the Kingswood Brotherhood.
Oh, that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, Miles Toyne is the Captain General of the Gold Company that Jon Con wanted to meet with, but he apparently passed away sometime. And when Jon Con meets the Golden Company, it's now Harry Strickland.
So these are the creation of these fault lines then, okay? Because Toyne and Bracken, those are two of the houses that are going to eventually support the Blackfyre Rebellion. The backbones of it, yeah. So you can see how the corruption, it's not just that Aegon the Unworthy named his legitimized his bastards. All the corrupt things that he did are chickens that later had to come home to roost, you know? So
yeah, and Aegon, of course, his last middle finger to the realm is on his deathbed when he legitimizes all these bastards, great and small, from the ones born of high noble ladies to the ones born to sex workers. It did not matter. He declares all of them legitimate, and then dies. And then so that's what we're left with. So anyone who has a problem with Daeron the Good, namely all of these guys who lost their offices, who were living large through the corruption of Aegon IV by buying him favors, they're now kicked out, because now we have an actual good king who is trying to drain the swamp, as it were. And then
the crocodiles got mad. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. So Daeron is in a position where he has to clean house, and this makes even more enemies or forces, his potential enemies all out of power. Yeah. And so they're all sitting there with sour grapes and frowny face emojis.
Yeah, gotcha. Daeron coming into the throne is like a less violent version of Stannis. We can think if Stannis had like everyone knows, like if Robert had made Stannis hand of the king like Stannis wanted, Peter Baelish and Varys and guys like that would be going, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap, I'm gonna die. Daeron is not gonna kill them, but the guys are still going, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap, I'm gonna lose my job because this guy's here to clean house, and he actually means it. He actually is gonna do his best to get things working again. And so a lot of guys who bought their way into office, they lose their jobs. But now, but at the same time, it's like even though they're kicked out of court, they got all these bastards running around, and it's like, well, if we can find one of them and get him to think our way, we can prop him up. And that becomes the problem. And Daemon Blackfyre is prone to flattery. So you have all of these people whispering in his ear, hey man, you should be king. Hey man, your dad gave you the sword. That means he wanted you to succeed. There's a situation where there's this tourney. I forget what year it is, but it's a tourney, and the last two combatants are Daemon Blackfyre and Baelor Breakspear, and they're breaking lances left and right. It gets to the point where it's like, it's obviously a tie, but somebody has to call it, and it's called in favor of Baelor Breakspear. Now, in a situation like that, the person to be the tiebreaker would be the person at the highest point of office. This was a tourney at Summerhall that Daeron the Good attended, so obviously the king himself is the highest point of office. Who do you think he's going to declare the winner? His bastard half-brother or his true-born son, crown prince, successor to the throne? He chooses Baelor. So that means now you got a lot of people coming up to Daemon saying, you got robbed, you totally won that. And as a man prone to flattery, words like that are going to get you far.
I love that some of this comes down to sour grapes about what is essentially sports.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
I mean, George being the football, we know that George does that, like the giant beating the guy with the Dallas Cowboys logo as his symbol.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
that's good. So yeah, a lot of sour grapes are forming, are growing on the vine. That's what I'm seeing here. Mm-hmm. And then so we've got in 187 is when Dorne comes into the realm.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I kept saying Mors. It was Meryn Martell.
And that's 3 years after Aegon IV dies. So Daeron takes the throne. He starts cleaning house. He honors the betrothal of Daemon Blackfyre to Rohan of Tyrosh.
Mm-hmm.
And Daemon's in favor of that or not?
Yeah. When Aegon IV was still alive, when he was trying to create alliances with the Free Cities, he set up a marriage pact between Daemon and the Arkan's daughter, this Rohan of Tyrosh. Daeron comes to the throne, and he looks at this and he goes, this is actually one of the few things Dad did right. Like having Tyrosh as an ally would work, so he honors the marriage pact. Because in this point in time, there is still something to gain from this.
And the answer I gave is no. House Blackfyre is formed during the rebellion. Absolutely, yeah. It's named after Daemon Blackfyre. So,
yeah. But this is shown like in the beginning, Daeron and Daemon had a pretty good relationship. It said that Daeron tried to do right by all of his bastard siblings. That's why, even though he could have delegitimized them, he could have taken his father's deathbed words and said, "No, never mind. Like we're erasing that." No, he honors it. He gives Daemon lands and rights. Same with Blackfyre. Same with Bloodraven and Bittersteel. Like Daeron is the one who gives Bloodraven Dark Sister. So he gives away the second ancestral sword to a bastard. So it's like Daeron recognizes, like, I'm not the martial one, but he is trying to keep them on his side.
Did he do that while after Baelor died or while Baelor was still alive?
Baelor.
Oh, that's Darren's son. He wouldn't be around yet. Yeah. Okay. Right. Sorry, we're talking about multiple generations at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that is so. So he didn't give either sword to Daeron. He gave two of them to two different bastards.
Yeah. So Aegon the Unworthy gives Blackfyre to Daemon.
Right.
Daeron will give Dark Sister to Bloodraven.
Oh. Oh, Daeron gives it to Bloodraven. Well,
Yeah.
who had Dark Sister before that?
We don't know. That's one of those. Oh, it
Okay.
was well until his death. Aemon the Dragon Knight was wielding Dark Sister.
Okay.
But in the years in between Aemon Dragon Knight dying and then Daeron giving it to Bloodraven, we don't know who had it, if anyone was wielding it, or if they just kind of like hung it back up on the wall.
And then the other thing is the chat is pointing out Daemon Blackfyre, he was in love with Daenerys and was mad when Daenerys was married to Meryn Martell, correct?
Yeah, and that's another point of contention. Is another thing with Aegon the Unworthy is Aegon. It's said that Aegon the Unworthy, whispering into Daemon's ear, gave him the idea of, well, you know, Targaryens, polygamy is a thing. You can have both. So Daemon gets it in his head from his father, because again, his father's just this much of a turd. I can have both. I can have Rohan and Daenerys. I can be like the Conqueror and have two wives. It ends up not happening.
It's like a Targaryen dream that pops up every
Yeah.
once in a while.
But like Daeron, as much as Daeron's trying to be nice to his half siblings, even he's like, no, we're not going to go that far. I'm not going to let you do that much.
And so let's see here. Summerhall is built in the Dornish Marches, near where the boundaries of the Reach, the Stormlands, and Dorne meet. So was it built then as part of the bringing Dorne into the realm to sort of like commemorate that? Is that the idea?
Yeah, it's to celebrate it. So Dorne is in the realm, build Summerhall right at the junction of the Dornish Marches, where Stormlands, Dorne, and the Reach all meet.
Yeah, I never realized that.
And
okay.
Yeah. So it's another thing. It's a symbol by putting it right there at like the border, right at the boundaries where they all meet. For the Marcher Lords, who again are already mad that Dorne wasn't humbled, Summerhall, as a symbol of peace, built right there on the border, is another slap in the face to them. It's like this is like a monument.
We like fighting here. We're the Marcher Lords. What do you mean? Peace with the Dornish. I can hear it now.
Marcher Lords will look at Summerhall as a monument to weakness in their eyes.
Maybe they did it. Okay. So now we're moving into the actual first Blackfyre Rebellion. So how does it get started, though?
Yeah.
So Daemon's got a son, and it's kind of Bittersteel that organizes it, right? Can you summarize that while I go get Cleo, who's screaming for my attention?
Sure. So basically, at this point, things are reaching ahead. We've got years. We're well into Daeron II's reign. We're 12 years in. So we reached the point where anyone who's tried to be good about this, tried to like grace their way back into office with Daeron, it's become clear of, no, you suck. You were my dad's lickspittle. You ain't getting your job back. So when you exhaust all your options, this is when they start looking towards more of these bastards. And at this point, Daemon is a man grown. He's in his early 20s. So he looks like the new pretty hot thing of, hey, if we don't like Daeron, we can try and butter up Daemon. He is the better choice. He looks like a Targaryen. He's said to look like the Conqueror. He's Targaryen on both sides because his father is Aegon and his mother is Dana the Defiant. He's not like Daeron, who's they see as like he's described as having like a pot belly, weak shoulders. Like there is like the virgin Daeron versus the Chad Damon meme that Alt Shift X put up. Like perfect. But it does do a great job of really illustrating how people viewed these two guys. And then Sir Eustace Osgrey in the Sworn Sword, like he definitely seems to be playing that meme with the man crush that he obviously has on Daemon, the way he describes him. It's like Ned describing Robert as like built like a maiden's dream. You're muted.
I don't need you to make every single man admiring another man's muscular curvature into some sort of homoerotic fan fiction, okay? But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Yep. So what you have here
Speaking
is
of
like
which, we're going pink right now because yeah. Don't quit making stuff gay, Tim. Says man with
You don't need me. You don't need me to make it gay. George does a good job pointing it out. I'm just shining lights on it.
yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so all these guys who are fed up with Daeron, who realize like they have no other way of getting their offices or whatever perks they had back, they start looking at Daemon. And then it comes to a head when you add Bittersteel and Fireball into Quentin Ball. Because Quentin Ball was a master at arms at the Red Keep. He thought, Quentin Ball was told by Aegon IV that he was going to be elevated to a Kingsguard. And Quentin Ball, in preparation for that, he annuls his marriage. He leaves his wife. He like starts prepping himself to don the white cloak and sees this as like, okay, we're gonna I'm gonna set myself up for this. I'm gonna do right. Aegon dies, and Daeron makes it very obvious of you ain't being raised to my Kingsguard. So that's when Fireball gets all pissed off. So now you've got this man who thought he was going to be a Kingsguard, and you got Bittersteel, and now they're whispering into Daemon's ear.
Okay, so at this point, I'm observing two things. Mm-hmm. One, when me and Maynard Plum talk about politics, which we do all the time, and you guys are not getting even 99% of anything that we say on the phone. Hashtag, that's not going on the podcast. Something we say often to each other. When we talk about politics, we talk about how everything is personal. Politics is personal and politics is local. You hear both of those sayings, and it's true. And George understands that very well. And so you can see how, when we say, well, why did the Blackfyre Rebellion happen? It's kind of because all of these little freaking things, right? Like all of these little things that happened, all of these little resentments, all of these little slights. People, I thought I was going to get chosen to the Kingsguard. I divorced my wife and made her a nun. What do you mean? Like the tourney decision, like, and then so my second point, so now that we can see that like this war starts, it's like there's political tension with the Dornish, there's Aegon legitimizing the bastards, there's the fact that Daemon Blackfyre looks the part and Daeron doesn't, on and on and on. But my second point is that you start to see the criticism of Daeron, which is like he needed to be more conciliatory, Cleo. Your feathers are wet, girl. It's hard to pet you. You need to be less reactionary. He perhaps could have maybe named Quentin Ball to the Kingsguard anyway. Like, is there any indication that Quentin Ball was unsuitable to be a Kingsguard? If he'd been promised by his father, maybe he should have stuck with that one, right? Maybe he should have named Daemon Blackfyre the winner of the tourney and then sat down with his son afterward and be like, look, son, sometimes you got to take one for the team, and here's why I did this. Or, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know which move should have been, but like, you know, did he need to fire absolutely everyone all at once? Could he have done that in phases? Could we have found a few of them to keep on that were less corrupt? Like, I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. Like, but it goes to show that Daeron II was not perfect, and I think that is the point that George is trying to hammer home. It's also why I said why I like the idea of Aemon the Dragon Knight being his actual birth father, is showing like it. What you can't put all these people on a pedestal in the like Targaryen or not, king or not, greatest knight in the land or not. These are humans. They have flaws. They're gonna make mistakes. Daeron the Good is going to make some choices that, in the long run, probably weren't good, but at that point in time, made sense to him. seeing how much corruption was on his father's court, writing everyone off with broad strokes probably made sense to him at the time.
And then you
But that
also
does
see,
mean,
okay, Cleo, that's enough, dude. Gee whiz, man. And then you also see the problem with, like, how much do you negotiate and conciliate, and how much do
Mhm.
you show people that you're tough and that you're the boss? So he's cleaning house, and that's kind of tough. But, you know, yeah, like
Yeah.
he's also got to conciliate because otherwise he's making too many enemies.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
people are
And then,
still talking about him like he's weak. So you can't win.
yeah. And so that's the thing. Like, yeah, firing Butterwell's hand and kicking them out of the court, that was good. Getting rid of the Brackens, that was good. But Quentin Ball seems like someone who got caught up in the storm and probably was someone that should have been kept on, but in all this cleaning house, he got swept out with the rest.
So
He
I'd
just
say
got
Quentin
caught up.
Ball's the one that stands out to me because he was like one of Daemon's stoutest allies. And he was the master at arms, right? Like he trained people how to, like, yeah, that was a bad enemy to make. That was like dismissing Barristan Selmy, kind of.
Yeah, I believe Quentin Ball is the one who trained Daemon at arms when Daemon was a kid. So that's too. He also already has that relationship with him as a former teacher. So Quentin Ball whispering these things into Daemon's ear, he already has a point of influence over Daemon as the master at arms. So if your teacher, someone you looked up to, someone you admired and respected, is also now whispering things into your ear, that's going to be another major push of maybe I should make a claim.
So is there a moment before the war where Daeron starts to see this coming and realizes he's gone too far?
Yeah, and that is when because he has Daemon arrested. Now here's the thing: we don't know what it is exactly that tips Daeron off. We have to fill in some blanks here. But for me, in my opinion, I think it was Bloodraven. Again, the heart in conflict with itself. Bloodraven talking to Bran. There was a woman I loved, a brother I loved, a brother I hated. And the speculation has always been, which brother is he talking about? Is he talking about Daeron or Daemon? Now, yeah, he could have been talking about Daeron, but that seems too easy.
There's
I
no
think the
conflict with
brother
that, yeah.
I think the brother he loved was Daemon, and I think Bloodraven may have been the one to snitch. What I see happening here, this is all my tinfoil, but it makes sense, and so follow me along here.
Real quick, how old is Bloodraven at this time? Teenager, right?
Bloodraven is 5 years. Okay, so Daemon at this point would be, he's born in 170. So Daemon would be 26. Bloodraven would be 21.
Okay, what's your tinfoil?
So when Daemon is garnering support, and he has Quentin Ball, and he has Bittersteel, and he has these Marcher Lords, probably went to Bloodraven too. Have as many brothers as you can. And we also got to suspect, like, when is Bloodraven getting into politics? Well, we know that under Aenys, he is Master of Whispers and Hand of the King, but he had to get his start somewhere. So I believe that that Bloodraven probably got his role as Master of Whispers first for Daeron. That's something I suspected. That's something I talked about in the House Lotston video.
Yeah,
But
it
I'm
kind of makes sense. Yeah, he would need some kind of ally here.
Yeah. So it's natural first for Daemon to want his another half brother as an ally. And if I'm correct in my guess, and that half brother also has a seat on the small council, then that makes him even more valuable. Now you got a man on the inside. So I think that Daemon approached Bloodraven looking for his support, but Bloodraven, looking at who is supporting looking at who is supporting Daemon, and it's like, okay, well, who do you have on your side? And seeing all these C and D list houses, all these guys who had their positions from their father, Bloodraven probably said, no, I'm not going to join you. And I think Bloodraven, especially too, if he was Master of Whispers, did his job, did his duty, and informed Daeron. And that's what leads to Daemon being arrested before the rebellion can really kick off. But then Quentin Ball is the one who busts him out of jail.
This all checks out to me, right? Yeah. Quentin Ball would be able to do that because he can command the various soldiers of the castle. They're used to taking orders from him. And when you look at Daron, it's like, yeah, he kind of needs an ally here.
Yeah.
So yeah, Bloodraven makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I think that all checks out, Tim.
Yeah. Another thing that was happening that flies under the radar, but actually is important, is also at the time, Daemon was minting coins with his face. That's why in the Sworn Sword, when they find that coin and Dunk notices, like, that's not Daeron the Good. Wait, that's not the right letter. It's an M instead of an R. Well, minting in this point in time, minting coins, that is a right of the crown. So for Daemon to be minting currency with his face on it means that, like, yeah, we're past the point of no return. He's gunning for it right now.
Sean MacArthur says Daemon equals minty maelstrom confirmed. It was a minting maelstrom, though. That's the whole thing. It's like the act of minting those coins was part of creating the storm that was the Blackfyre Rebellion. So, well done, Sean. That theory also checks out.
Yeah, that's why we get, like, Uthor Underleaf has the coin. He has to bop his squire on the head, like, you fool, I have to melt this coin down. This is traitor's gold. Like, that's how we know.
We love our Uthor Underleaf. So the events, there's only a couple, let's see, battles were fought in the Vale, the Westerlands, the Riverlands, and the Reach. Ambrose Butterwell is fired as Hand of the King. We mentioned he put one son on each side. The Battle of Redgrass Field, many people died. Aegor Rivers took Blackfyre after Daemon and his sons died, struck down by the arrow of Bloodraven, of course, and the Raven's Teeth. Hafer died. See, Prince Baelor is named Hand of the King under Daron. So Baelor is young at that point, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, so Baelor and Maekar, the hammer and the anvil, they are very young, and yet they are stepping up to the role of generals, more or less. And they're the ones that bring it to an end. And so that is how they really make a big names for themselves.
And they've got to be like teenagers, right? Late teens?
Yeah, you think this is like Stannis at age 18 holding Storm's End during Robert's Rebellion? Maekar and Baelor are at that same age.
There you go.
Very young men being propelled into very high roles of importance. And
They're children. They can't choose for themselves, Tim.
No, this is boys made to grow up quick because now they have all this responsibility and all these other people depending on them.
Yeah, when the war happens, you just gotta. Well, we'll see that with House of the Dragon too. Like, it's toughest for the kids that are like 13 or so, 12. That like they want to fight, but they're not. It's like, could we have waited a few years for this war to start so I could voice could drop at least, you know?
And that's what ends up happening because Daemon Blackfyre dies, so too do his twin sons. They're 12. They're on the
battlefield, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Daemon is 26. At 26 he has 9 kids already. The oldest are 12, which means he fathered them at 14. Again, starting young. But yeah, Aegon and Aemon Blackfyre are only 12 when they get hit with Bloodraven's arrows.
So, why? Yeah, so there you go. Well, I'm glad I brought that up then. Why has Bloodraven always been so loyal to the crown? Could it have something to do with the visions? You got to be loyal to one side or the other. But yeah, Bloodraven amongst all the people alive at this point is going to be concerned with Aegon's prophecy and, you know, maintaining, because part of that is maintaining the Targaryen dynasty. So it could be that. It could be he gets off on being ruthlessly effective. And so he chose a side and then he rides for that side because that's what you do once you choose a side. But yeah, I would guess the prophecies are probably part of it. And then Joe Garcia asked, do you think it's possible Bloodraven sided with Daron because he knew prophetically that Daron's descendant would specifically be the prince that was promised? Maybe. That's the level of... probably not, I would guess. I would guess that it's more vague and that he's more thinking about, like, well, we've got to keep the dynasty stable. You're starting a rebellion. That's not good for stability. And then also there is... He did hate Bittersteel, right? So maybe you can explain that. That goes back to Aegon the Unworthy and his mistresses, though, doesn't it? And let me switch back over to the regular chat.
I mean, that goes back to the dawn of time, the Bracken Blackwood feud, and that's another thing again that flies under the radar is how much of the Blackfyre influences actually stem from the Bracken Blackwood feud. Like, yeah,
And this is again, all politics is local,
all
and House of
politics.
the Dragon's doing a good job too. We're going to see that in season 2 a lot, where little local feuds like Blackwood and Bracken are shaping the war as it turns towards the Riverlands. In that case, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, so when we again, like Bloodraven's only 21 when this happens. We don't know how young Bloodraven starts getting into prophecy and all that. But again, as you say, like politics is personal, politics is local. For me, there doesn't have to be this whole prophesized magic thing to why Bloodraven didn't side with Daemon. It could simply come down to I'm not fighting alongside Bitterstool because I hate him. Like, it could definitely be as simple as that. And then Bloodraven being a pretty smart guy, again, looking at, well, who are your supporters? Peak, Bracken, like Butter, like these are not names. You got nobody. You don't have like these are C and D list houses. You don't have any great lords. And I can already smell the bullshit. Like these are dad's guys or the sons of dad's guys who are trying to, leech their way back. They're trying to worm their way back in. Like it could be as simple as that, as Bloodraven looking at this and just going, no, God, no, no. and then having Bittersteel on there too. And it said like Bloodraven and Bittersteel hated each other for years because of their families. The Bracken Blackwood feud, that was imposed upon them as children, especially too because Bloodraven's mother is the 6th mistress, Bittersteel's was the 5th. So Aegon the Unworthy, again, sowing these seeds, he dumps a Bracken for a Blackwood. So the births of Bittersteel and Bloodraven is Aegon IV pouring more salt into that wound.
So when we think about the motivations of young Bloodraven, it's really interesting to think about, when does the prophetic angle come in? When do the dreams start controlling like his decision making? When he's a young man, he's starting off with a very relatable young man type of feud. Our family hates your family, and you in particular are a jackass, and I hate you especially because we're the same age, and we have the same dad but different moms, and our moms hate each other and all the rest. So, but at some point in his life, he starts obviously having, look, Bloodraven might have dragon dreams and green visions. We don't know. He's such a cocktail of possibility. We don't know when the previous three-eyed crow might have been reaching out to him, or the Weirwood net proper, or again, if he's having dragon dreams, which are from his Targaryen blood. We do not know. We don't know how much of his green seer power he was using to spy on everyone. That's certainly the rumor. So it seems like, yes, I can give you a tinfoil about how, the ghost of the High Heart served him weirwood paste in the same cave that Stoneheart and Beric are inhabiting now, and awakened his powers one day while he was out on the hunt, and that he was then an active green seer while he was also Hand of the King. Or maybe he was just, remember, Bran is using skin changer powers before he becomes a green seer. So it could just be that Bloodraven, and this is maybe more likely, is that he was skin changing animals like ravens and spying that way while he was Hand of the King, only to later activate his green seer gifts when he finally gets up to the cave in the north. That's the more like safe assumption, I guess. But yeah, this is interesting because some of those prophetical, like, was his grudge with Bittersteel shaping how he interpreted prophecy? To like someone in the chat said, maybe Bloodraven became convinced that it definitely has to be Daeron's son that can not a child of, well, he likes Daemon, I guess, so he wouldn't be prejudiced against Daemon's line. But yeah, did his grudge against Bittersteel shape his influence or his interpretation of prophecy? Did he have to synthesize those two ideas? We can only speculate, but it is interesting. And it looks like I've got, I'll check that out, Maud Mary.
Because that's the thing, like, without that's something that we need more information on Bloodraven is when did he start getting into prophecy and magic. But what we can say for certain is his relationship with Bittersteel did influence his view of politics. That is why he is always looking across the narrow sea, waiting for that next Blackfyre Rebellion, because he knows Bittersteel is alive and out there. And that is why Bloodraven, during the Dunk and Egg novels, is frowned upon by so many people, because it's seen as you're ignoring problems at home because you're so focused on what's happening out there. And that becomes like the big criticism of Bloodraven during Aenys' reign, with the drought and the spring sickness and all of that stuff.
Right. So yeah. So we can see that, like, it does seem like his personal feelings were wrapped up in the Blackfyres and stuff. That doesn't seem to be all based on his interpretation of prophecy and just holding the realm together. So
yeah.
Yep, because I mean, he says loved and hated, right? One brother that I loved, a brother that I hated. Like, no, he had passions. He wasn't always a tree corpse. Now, Maud Mary is bringing up a potential parallel. I don't know if I agree with this. Okay. They are comparable. They're in similar situations. They handle it differently. But Tywin Lannister and Daeron are both taking over for weak fathers and then sort of trying to compensate or even overcompensate for their father's weakness. So Tywin did this. Well, he actually did the Reigns of Castamere before Tytos died, but it's still in compensation for his father's weakness. And basically, Tywin made himself a psychopath, or brought out those traits in his personality in order to make himself tough as an overcompensation. What we're talking about with Daeron is, like, did he go too far, dismissing the mostly corrupt appointments of his father, which is good in a vacuum. We're sort of asking, like, did he sweep up someone that maybe he should have hung on to? Did he throw a baby out with the bathwater? Was Quentin Ball someone that he should have hung on to? Were there a couple of others? So, I mean, I guess they're sort of in a similar position, but the people themselves aren't really comparable or similar people at all. So
yeah, well, because it's
Daeron doesn't do genocides in order to prove he's tough or anything.
Yeah, well, I think the difference there is it's two different kinds of weakness that Daeron and Tywin are trying to make up for. Daeron's trying to clear out total corruption. Tywin's trying to clear out a man who let everyone walk all over him.
Yes, and there is a similar, like, people kind of walked all over Aegon too, but it was like with his complicity. But yeah, they're both weak in their corruption as well.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, I think a key difference there is, like, we can use the Terrence Toyne as for an example. What would Tytos Lannister do if he walked in on his mistress with another man? Aegon IV had that man dismembered. Tytos Lannister probably would have become a cuck and probably would have looked the other way and written it off. Like, that's the key difference in these men's attitudes when it comes to their weakness.
So moving on through here, we've got the aftermath. And so the year of the spring sickness. How does this affect things? This is what affects who's the heir. This is how Egg eventually, gets on a path to becoming king. So essentially, Baelor dies just before this in the first Dunk and Egg book, which is like 207, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Baelor Breakspear dies in the Hedge Knight, and then the following, year or two later, a bunch of his brothers are taken out, and so the heirs are now Maekar's kids, right?
Yeah, because this is what we said, like, the pruning of the Targaryen family tree, because for Egg to become king, a lot of Targaryens have to die. That's why he's Aegon the Unlikely, because of how far down the line in succession he is. So we lose Baelor Breakspear at the tourney at Ash, but Baelor has two sons. So as the sons of the Crown Prince, they still stand in line between Baelor's brothers. So now they have to die. and we lose them. Baelor Breakspear dies. Daeron the Good and his grandsons, the children of Baelor Breakspear, all three of them die from the Great Spring Sickness. So
And
then
some people think that that's Bloodraven. I don't think Bloodraven controls the spring sickness myself.
No, what they think is Bloodraven, and it comes from that Fire and Brimstone preacher, is that one of Baelor's Breakspear's children, one of them, his wife he was married. The older one was married, and his wife was pregnant, but she had a miscarriage. And the preacher says, like, a shadow came in the night to strangle him in the womb. And so they're blaming Bloodraven for this miscarriage, for the death of Daeron's great grandchild.
He might have done that. Who knows? I mean, I'm not saying Bloodraven's above a little shadow baby murder, but Kelly Johnson, Maynard James Plum, if you're listening, if you could put up a poll, is Aemon the Dragon Knight the father of King Daeron? Yes or no? That's the question. Is Aemon the Dragon Knight the father of Daeron? And I have a Maynard James Plum related super chat that just came in. Kelly is asking, what is the relation between James Maynard Plum and James Maynard Keenan? Great question. So, Maynard James Plum, my channel manager, is always watching and always listening, very like Bloodraven, but he is constantly listening to or producing rock and roll like Maynard Keenan. And he also kind of lives in the countryside and enjoys wine like Maynard Keenan, and he's slightly eccentric, same haircut. There's a few other parallels. So, yeah, Maynard James Plum is a synthesization. Maynard James Keenan, no, how do we say it? Maynard James Plum is a synthesization of the two concepts. And he is apparently doing family stuff, and so I will put this poll up. I do not see it appearing. His ears must be burning somewhere. I hope your ears are burning, Mr. Plum. But I will start the poll here. Is Aemon the Dragon Knight the father? And we're talking about Daeron, obviously. Mm-hmm. So there, we will see what we've got going on there. Oh, and I will make it so that we can see the results as they come in.
Yeah. Yes.
These are calumnies. I cannot believe you would think that Aemon the Dragon Knight, he, the paragon of virtue, would do such a thing.
Yeah. How dare I think the paragon of virtue was human at the end of the day? I know.
Outrageous. Yeah, it's a perfect circle. That's right, Kelly. It all comes around.
But so what we were talking about before, yeah. So for this pruning the family tree, so Daeron dies, Baelor entire line dies. Now the succession hops back to Daeron's other kids, and that's when it goes to the second son, and that's Aerys. Or no, Aerys. I'm sorry, Aerys the first, not the Mad King, the first Aerys. And he never consummates his marriage. He's married, but never consummates it. This is the guy that they say would sooner take a book to bed than his wife.
And who's he married to?
A woman of House Penrose.
She doesn't sound hot. Penrose, that doesn't sound hot at all.
But yeah, so they never the marriage is never consummated. He dies without children. But
Felina
it said
Stokeworth, she's hot. You can tell by the name. Like, yeah, Penrose, come on. Yeah. Eleanor Penrose. Yeah, that's not a hottie. Sorry. I'm totally kidding, guys. I'm not even. Yeah, sorry. Talking loose, but.
But when it comes to speculation of when does Bloodraven start getting into prophecy?
Oh no, I'm corrected. She is pretty. It's, and of course I am joking. Yeah, no, it's clearly written to be Aerys, who prefers, not the bear or the. I forget where that meme has gone now. I made the joke. I was like, what about Tim? I think you saw this on Twitter. It's like all this talk about women who would choose the bear over a man. It's like, what about men whose ideal woman is a bear?
Oh yeah, Mage Mormont.
Tormund. But no, so Aerys is let's say that he perhaps is ace.
Yeah,
Honestly, we should probably
that's
take
what I.
that actually seriously. He does not wish to. He doesn't want it. Does not
Yeah,
want it. So he does not have an heir, and then he dies fairly young. How does he die?
he dies of just sickness. He goes down in 221. Um, but under his.
Kyle father to bears. Oh, father to beans. Sorry, I read that as bears. Never mind.
But
Go ahead.
the problem with Aerys is that it's during his reign that we'll get two Blackfyre rebellions. We get the second, which is the tourney at White Walls. That's the Mystery Night. But then later we'll get the third, and that one actually, unlike the second, which is kind of killed in the cradle, as it were, and only a few people die. The third grows out of control and becomes a full blown war.
Okay, so the second one, that's the one in the Mystery Night. That is John the Fiddler. That's my king right there. I'm loyal to John the Fiddler. I'd follow him to hell and back. But unfortunately, everybody rains on his parade. It's sad. It really is heartbreaking. He was just so enthusiastic, you know. But yeah, he didn't have the sword. And this was, to get back to our earlier point, for the Blackfyres, to have a real Blackfyre rebellion, you need two things. Bitter steel, and you need the sword. And they had neither. And so that just showed, that's why it was a pathetic rebellion. Because they couldn't get half the realm to rise. They weren't minting their own currency. Minting your own currency is a statement. We should really emphasize that. It's the Blackfyre side saying, no, we are a government in exile with our own currency and Hand of the King and all that stuff. And it's the same thing in House of the Dragon. Both monarchs have a King's Guard and a hand and all that stuff. So they're both saying, no, we are the government. So the second Blackfyre Rebellion, it's bad, very low voter turnout. They don't have the big guns. They don't have bitter steel or the sword. And so it peters out. So the third one, we don't know that much about it, but tell us what we do know. And where does that starting with? Is that the Dagon Greyjoy bit, or?
No. I threw Dagon in there because Dagon is another one of these domestic issues that Bloodraven is ignoring. That's another reason why people are mad at Bloodraven, because it's like, why are you focused on all this crap going on across the sea? We got problems at home. The Westerlands and the North are getting pillaged by Dagon, and you're doing absolutely nothing about it. That's why the Starks have to kind of take it on their own to deal with this problem. And that's also why it's notable that the Starks sit out most of the Blackfyre rebellions. The North never gets involved because they always are left with problems of their own to deal with.
Yeah, well, it just shows you that, the North doesn't really belong in the same country as the South. They're so separate, and that's why they don't really hold. There's no reason for the North to even remain part of the kingdoms as soon as the dragons are gone. And it takes great John Umber to point that out for some reason. And it was no, they would have thought of that right away, I think. Yeah. But being that as it may, maybe some of the Starks knew about the prophecy and they were chilling because of that. But, okay, something just occurred to me. The start of this war, essentially, was King Daeron giving the order to arrest Daemon Blackfyre. Okay? And that is the thing that pushed the Blackfyre side to the point of being yes, we should take up arms. It occurs to me that this is written as a loose parallel to Aerys and Robert and Ned. Aerys is more clearly a bad king. Obviously, Daeron's not a bad king. He's he's not Aerys at all. But he is arresting somebody that basically has done nothing wrong. Daemon didn't do anything to deserve being arrested, right? He arrested him because he smelled that there was a plan afoot or something, right? How did that work?
Yeah, that's what I said. Like, we don't know the real reason. I speculated that it was probably Bloodraven snitching him out. I mean, him minting his own coin was not doing him any favors. That's just at that point you're making it obvious. But I think that Daeron arrested Daemon not out of malice. I think it was more of a I'm doing this for your own good. You need to calm down before you have a full blown tantrum.
Wait, when did he start minting coins?
He started mid. We don't know the exact date, but at some point in the lead up to 196, he starts minting his own coins, and they start passing around because they're still in fluctuation.
You mean before they actually rebelled?
Before they actually rebelled, Daemon was already minting coins.
But isn't that sort of the same thing as rebelling when you mint your own coins? How does that work? I'm confused.
Well, again, it's was Daemon doing this, or were people just doing it and slapping Daemon's name on it? Like, how much? Again, Daemon's prone to flattery. If the Marcher Lords are the ones propping up, again, like the whole murkiness of the Blackfyre Rebellion is how much of this was actually coming from Daemon's own mouth, and how much of this was people speaking for him. Because Daemon is being used as in a lot of ways, is being used as a puppet for these other points. But when the arrest happens, that's like, okay, now we're at the point of no return.
Right. And so there was a reason why like they were clearly planning rebellion. But this, it's just interesting how the sort of a similar tipping point to Aerys, arresting Brandon and then demanding Ned and Robert be delivered to him. So that's,
yeah,
interesting. But yeah, different.
Yeah,
not a straight parallel, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said. Like the heart in conflict with itself. Bloodraven, the Daemon being the brother that Bloodraven loved. Bloodraven's conflict being in, do I turn in my own brother? Well, then what's Daeron's point of conflict? Again, Daeron tried to make nice with Daemon as much as he could. And Daeron doesn't seem like the type of guy who wants to go to war right away. He brought Dorne in peacefully through marriage. Daeron seemed like the type of king who didn't want to go to war until all other options were exhausted. That's why I see the arrest of Daemon being as something of, we need to bring you in and get you, not so much of we're arresting you because of what you did wrong. We need to get you away from the people who are making you make bad decisions.
Right. Well, that didn't work.
Did not work.
Anyways, so our poll is at 59% yes, say Aemon the Dragon Knight is the father. So I am naive. I am naive. I am
or I'm just very convincing.
Is nothing sacred? No, it's fine. I don't really know, but okay, so the third Blackfyre Rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that. A little faster than we did the first one. Obviously, there's less to say about it, but yeah, what's going on with the third one?
So Aenys is king. He's now king for his reign's gone on. In the meantime, more pruning of the family tree. The middle child, Rhaegal, the one who danced naked in the Red Keep, he dies. All of his kid dies. It's just shaping up of like and Aenys Aerys still doesn't have a kid, so it's like really just sealing like Maekar is going to be the next king. That's when we get 219, the third Blackfyre Rebellion. Egg is a teenager at this point, and Aerion Brightflame, at some point in time, has come back from Lys. Egg, Aerion, and Maekar, and Duncan the Tall will all fight in this war. Maekar, again, will be an army commander. Aegon will be knighted here, and Aerion will commit certain actions, which I'm pretty sure means war crimes.
Because there's got to be some war crimes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. That is interesting. Just like when you think about the Mystery Knight and Dunk meeting Aerion and Dunk fighting Aerion in that duel where they beat the hell out of each other, and then they later end up fighting together at war. Like, that's kind of wild to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what Aegon is remembered for his courage, Maekar for his leadership, and Aerion for quotation marks certain actions.
Certain war crimes.
Yeah. We get the second duel with Bittersteel between Bloodraven and Bittersteel. Somehow Bittersteel escapes again. Um, he is arrested. They
He's
actually
like
get
a
him this time.
comic book villain. You
Yeah.
just can't get him.
Oh,
It's got to
crap.
be an episode next week, right? Yeah. So he's
Yeah. So they actually catch Bittersteel this time, and they want to. Bloodraven and Aerion are both pushing for put him to death, but Aerys, for whatever reason, allows him to take the black. Bittersteel should have gone to the wall, but as he's on a boat on his way to Eastwatch by the sea, the boat is intercepted by Blackfyre supporters, and Bittersteel escapes again. He makes it back to the disputed lands, and he crowns Daemon's grandson. So the third Blackfyre Rebellion is about Daemon's fourth son. Again, so Daemon had 7 sons. The 2 eldest die. Daemon Blackfyre Jr. is arrested at during the mystery night. So now this fourth kid, FAegon, that is the one that Bittersteel crowns. And we don't know why. We don't know why Bittersteel chose FAegon over Daemon Jr. Could just be he probably just saw FAegon as a better
He
kid.
probably hated the gay. I mean, Bittersteel seems like the type. Might even be repressed himself. But yeah, that's.
Yeah. Well, what happens to FAegon is
because John the Fiddler is 100% vibes. Like, if you're not down with like the good vibes, you're not going to be down with John the Fiddler. In all seriousness, so yeah, they seem like different personalities.
So it ends when FAegon Blackfyre is slain treacherously after giving up his sword. So he drops his sword, he yields. Somebody murks him anyway. Who did it? That becomes the question. A lot of people like to say Bloodraven because of how much Bloodraven hates the Blackfyres. Bloodraven, though, is dueling Bittersteel. So I think Aerion Brightflame, these certain actions, one of the war crimes that Aerion definitely commits during this, it was probably Aerion Brightflame who killed FAegon after he yielded. That's my tinfoil.
Yeah, we just don't have enough information, but that would make sense. And it's also interesting that like Aerion and Bloodraven are on the same side of this disagreement. Because Egg, when he's talking to Dunk about strategies with enemies, he says, Daron says something like, "Oh, you gotta, help the enemy back up when they kneel." And Bloodraven's like, "You gotta put them traitors to death." And he sort of is saying, weighing the two philosophies. So, yeah, Bloodraven is he's a little more. I do like Bloodraven, but he's a little pro-fascist. I'll admit that.
Yeah.
So, pro-fascist. Don't take me too literally, okay? But he does run a total information awareness network. So,
yeah.
So that's the third Blackfyre Rebellion. Oh, we're going faster. So the fourth Blackfyre Rebellion is Daemon the third Blackfyre. That's FAegon's son, crowned by Bittersteel. And that happens over in Essos. Then Aerys dies, and it goes to Maekar. Now, Maekar's not someone I would launch a rebellion against. And it looks like they do not.
No. What happens is Maekar's rebellion that he has to deal with is the Peak Uprising, which I call Blackfyre Rebellion 3.5.
Oh, bonus Blackfyre Rebellion.
Because the Peaks, again, go back to Mystery Knight, who was propping up Daemon Blackfyre Jr., Gorman Peak. The Peaks are staunch Blackfyre supporters. And even in our current story, there are Peaks, or at very least guys who claim to be Peaks, that are in the Golden Company. They're the one. It's through them that we get that famous line of "Friends in the Reach." So the Peak. Again? This is me just trying to use context clues about
Randall Tarley is Gorman Peak coded, isn't he?
He is. He very much is.
Randall Tarley being the potential Friends in the Reach who's actually loyal. But we'll get there. Go ahead.
Yeah. So So Maekar, so in 231, winter comes to Westeros, and it's going to last for 6 years. And during this long winter, the Peaks launch their own uprising. And what my belief is that the Peak uprising was probably supposed to be part of the Fourth Blackfyre Rebellion, but they launched too early. Bittersteel could not, because of winter, Bittersteel could not get the Golden Company off of the Narrow Sea. And yet, so it's more like you could get the sense that the Peaks and Bittersteel were probably in communication.
They peaked too early.
Yeah, Bittersteel's telling them to wait, and they're like, "Gotta go, gotta go, gotta go." Yeah, a premature launch. That's why the Peak Rebellion is like Blackfyre Rebellion 3.5, and that's what's going to make the Fourth Blackfyre Rebellion pitter out so much faster, is because they're not going to have the Peaks launching prematurely.
Tim, I believe the Fourth Blackfyre Rebellion tired out prematurely.
But yeah, I think it's because of the Peak Rebellion, the Blackfyres lost a good amount of their support, and that's why the Fourth Blackfyre Rebellion, when it eventually does happen, when winter ends and Egg is now king, it's snuffed out in like a day. At least that's what, based on what we get on it. It does not last very long.
Now, the thing about the Peak Uprising is Maekar dies, doesn't he?
Yeah, they drop a giant boulder on his head.
Which is how you have to kill Maekar. It's a hammer and anvil this. How about boulder?
Yeah, and that's why the fact...
Where was that?
That's one of the things that I make fun of George about when it comes to House Peak is, okay, we've had Unwin Peak. We've had Gorman Peak. We've had... They commit regicide. How is it that the Peaks still have a castle? You know how many houses have been snuffed out completely for so much less?
Well, didn't they start with 3?
King. They had 3 castles. They still have 1, but still, they killed a king. How do they still have that damn How is House Lothston dead and House Peak is still allowed to live? And one of them is the current Lord of House Peak is married to a Lannister. So they're allowed to live, they're allowed to keep a castle, and they're allowed to marry up. How does this happen?
Yeah, why wasn't Jamal Murray suspended for throwing a towel on the court? I don't know. It's a mystery. It's ratings. It's because of ratings. The Peaks were good for ratings. They had to keep them around. That's what it is. They are good. They make good villains. So just got to keep them around. So Maekar dies, and then who takes? That's when Egg becomes king, right?
Yeah. So we have this, again, classic Targaryen succession crisis. So we get another great council, and everyone's throwing their hat into the ring. There are some who quietly go to the Citadel and they try to get Maester Aemon to take the throne, because people are looking at Aegon as that kid's half a peasant himself because of his travels with Duncan Egg and him getting more of an idea, a sense of empathy and sympathy for the common folk. Aerion Brightflame, he's dead. He drinks wildfire, but he has a son named Maegor. He's a little tiny baby, but still, Aerion is the older brother, so Maegor would actually be ahead of Aegon in succession. They cast him out because they're like, no, that's Aerion Brightflame's kid, and he named him Maegor. Like, we're not even going to chance this one.
The omens don't seem good on this. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not a shaman, but
but another word comes in from Aenys Blackfyre. This is Daemon Blackfyre's 5th son now. He throws his hat in the ring, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna put myself forward, but I'm gonna try and do this peacefully. I would like to come to your great council. And Bloodraven says, yes, of course, you can come. I allow it. Grants him guest right. As soon as Aenys Blackfyre shows up, arrest it, behead it. And then Bloodraven presents Aenys' head to the court and it basically says, this is what happens to Blackfyre supporters.
So I've got to go ahead. Sorry.
That's the crime that's going to land Bloodraven at the wall.
So I have a picture. Yeah. This is the only art we're showing today. It's so good. This is by Lord Cryraven. Cry me a raven. It's the moment that you're talking about. There it is. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yep.
he did not apologize. Unapologetic. That's the word. He's like, yeah, yes, I killed him. Yes, they deserve to die. And I hope they rot in hell. That's
I hope
kind of
they're
where
on.
he's at with that.
Yeah, and this is what lands Bloodraven at the wall because Egg wins the vote. Egg becomes king, but he has to look at Bloodraven as just like, look, you you gave your word, and your word as hand of the king because Bloodraven was Makar's hand. Bloodraven, we can assume, is the transitional authority right now until a new king is picked. So it's like your word was the crown's word. You offered him safe passage, but you
Yeah,
lied.
right.
That becomes the crime. That's why Aegon has to send him to the wall.
And that's absolutely correct. Like it's fun to say,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, cut his head off, but obviously this is why. This is one of the reasons why, even if you're judging Maegor from a completely amoral perspective, and it's okay to massacre people if they're your enemies or something, or you're more relativist, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
still not strategically smart to be cruel, and that is why Maegor died on the Iron Throne with everyone having deserted him and no one fighting to the death for him. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah.
so we see some of that. We just criticized Daron rather, for not making friends with some of these people who eventually became his enemies or mollifying them somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And so here we have kind of the opposite thing or at least like I said, Egg gets it. He's like, yeah, that's the word of the crown. I know he's a Blackfyre, but like you can't. Nobody's ever gonna trust us. We have to be able to be trusted to
Yeah.
function as a government. And so the obvious theory here, of course, is that at
Mm-hmm.
this point, Bloodraven wants to go to the wall,
Yeah. This is
perhaps
a
because
two.
he's getting locked in on prophecy, and so it's like we can eliminate this Blackfyre, and then I'll punish you, but we're actually doing what we want and eliminating an enemy at the same time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this is a two birds with one stone situation. I get to kill a Blackfyre and go to the wall like I want. Win-win for me. And no, little devil, he did not end a future war. If anything, he propelled another one because 2 years into Aegon's reign, just a few years into Aegon's reign, we will get the Fourth Blackfyre Rebellion. And it's more than likely that the Fourth Blackfyre Rebellion is a direct response to the killing of Aenys. Again, all politics are personal. If the crown offered Aenys Blackfyre safe passage and killed him, the Blackfyres that are back in Essos probably look at this. Well, now we have to respond. That is why hate is cyclical.
Yes, you can't kill your way out of a long running feud, right? Like, unless, yeah, you can't. So, because, like, the pretend goal is to, like, kill every single last one of your enemies and all their children so that none of them can ever come back to fight you. But, of course, that's never possible. There's always more family members to remember the deaths and come back around. And so that's one of the most poignant passages in the entire book, of course, is Ilaria Sand saying, okay, daughters, you're going to kill some Lannisters because they killed, and then they're going to kill you, and then my younger daughter will have to take revenge, and how far does it go? And the answer is 8,000 years if you ask the Blackwoods and Brackens, right? Now, of course, at different times in history, it's been more peaceful and less peaceful. We know there has been many Bracken and Blackwood intermarriages, so it's not always at war. But yeah, that's a major message of the novels, of course. Revenge just leading to fruitless cycles of violence, being unfulfilling, and all that stuff. So, Bloodraven, it's as interesting because Daron brought the Dornish into the realm through a peaceful compromise, marriage. But with the Blackfyres, we're now back to trying to kill our way to victory, kind of, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's why the idea of fAegon being a Blackfyre and the end goal for him to marry Daenerys and it being a reconciliation, again, like we've talked about, like the story, the end goal here is probably going to be reconciliation. You can't just kill the others and that's going to be the end of the story. Well, same here. A reconciliation between House Targaryen and House Blackfyre. If fAegon is a marriage and you close the hole and you mend the wound and you bring House Blackfyre and House Targaryen back together under one banner, under one roof, that is a way of reconciling all of this. And it allows Varys to get his pet project king on the throne. It's like a win-win. In his eyes, for Varys, this is a win-win situation for everyone if I can pull this off. But for Varys, just like has to be like Bloodraven, but I got to do a lot of terrible things along the way to make it happen.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that. But yeah, that's a good parallel to draw here. And it's gotten to the point where Varys and Illyrio aren't so much motivated by the Blackfyres so much as just like getting their blood on the throne. And they don't really care if we're calling it Blackfyre or Targaryen or if,
Yeah, red or black, a dragon is still a dragon. That's the line.
Exactly. That's Illyrio's mindset. So yeah, thank you for pointing all that out, how these things that seem like they're cleaning up a problem actually are just creating more problems for the future. So
yeah. And that's what, because Varys is Master Whispers, just like Bloodraven. So if you put Varys into the Bloodraven position, you can see like what Varys is doing links up quite well with what Bloodraven was doing in trying to get their ideal king on the throne. It's just that Bloodraven was doing it for the Targaryens in getting Egg on the throne for the prince that was promised prophecy. Varys is doing it, but most likely is doing it to place a Blackfyre on the throne.
The statue that was promised. Young Illyrio. All right.
Young Illyrio.
So, the Fourth Blackfyre Rebellion. Daemon III leads his forces across the Narrow Sea. We've got Bittersteel. We've got the Golden Company now, which is a thing. And this was created, of course, to sort of organize these various Blackfyre losers, if you will.
Yeah.
And to keep them strong and organized. Go ahead.
Yeah. Because on my channel, I read Tyrion 2, and Illyrio basically explained. Illyrio gives us a history lesson on what happened. So after Bittersteel flees the first time, after the first Blackfyre Rebellion, he needs to establish himself in Essos. He needs to get money. He needs to put food on the table. He joins with a free company. He joins the Second Sons. But in the years that he's doing this, he sees like all the Blackfyre supporters that came with him are starting to scatter because everyone needs to make money. Everyone's got to find purpose. So what Bittersteel does is he signs contract with the Second Sons, but he's using it to learn. He's learning the tricks of the trade. And after a few years of service with the Second Sons, he's like, okay, I know how to do this. And that's when he starts a company of his own. That becomes the founding of the Golden Company. And that's when he brings in as many Blackfyre supporters as he still can. And he's like, I got to keep all you guys under one roof before I lose any more of you. That's the founding. Yeah.
It's a good plan. Honestly.
And that's how we get the Golden Company, a company of exiles. And again, Bittersteel learning the tricks of the trade, the Golden Company standard of our word is as good as gold. By being with other free companies, he also would have seen the cowardice and the constant backstabbing. That's why he also had to create that as a rule of, if we all sign a contract, we're going to stick with that contract. It does not matter if someone outbids you and tries to buy us off. Like most other free companies will go to the highest bidder, and if someone pays them more, they'll turn cloak. Bittersteel sets it as a precedent of, no, we need to honor the contract. And that is how they go about for nearly 100 years. That is why the Golden Company breaking contract with Lys to go fight for fAegon is such a big deal. 100 years, they have never done this.
And that's exactly to the point. Like, whether you are a king or a mercenary company, it's, can people trust you? It still comes down to the same question. And so, yeah, it's interesting that Bittersteel went and founded the best company.
We need to be better than the rest.
Yeah. And it kind of makes sense because, of course, he's got training and resources. Like, he's got a different standard in mind for what things should be like that comes from a well-funded royal military. So this is Aegor Rivers Leading the Golden Company by Mark Simonetti. And here are some artwork that I prefer. These are Blackfyres dying. No, I'm kidding. I don't enjoy in fictional characters' death. I'm not like that.
Yeah,
This is Mike S. Miller, and this is the death of Daemon Blackfyre. It's actually a really tragic, haunting piece. It's really nice. And we've got, here is Daemon Living by Mike Hallstein, who does the best Valyrian steel swords of anyone. Love that. Here is The Knighting of Daemon Blackfyre by Aegon the Unworthy with Blackfyre, which he would not be able to hold with one hand. I will just say, having recently held a giant sword, they're very heavy. You could not hold it like that. You would need two hands. If it was sharp, you would not want someone to hold it with one hand on your shoulder like that. But be that as it may, that is this one is, by Mark Simonetti. Yeah. And then this one we haven't gotten to yet, but this is Maelys the Monstrous. So I'll just tuck that away. We'll come back to it. I was looking for a different Golden Company picture, but I couldn't find it. In any case, the Golden Company is interesting. And of course it is still existent to this day. And this is the same Golden Company that fAegon wins over with his little Daron speech. So this is created here. This is why it is a Sixth Blackfyre Rebellion. Even if fAegon doesn't know that he's a Blackfyre, and even if he's masquerading as a Targaryen, this is Bittersteel's army, the sons of Bittersteel's army.
Yeah, and so the Fourth Blackfyre Rebellion fizzles out very quickly. They wait, even though they come over, they've waited too long because they're waiting for winter to end. But this isn't like, it wouldn't be as if they launched this if they had launched this a few years earlier, like when Egg first took to the crown, would have been better. New, young, untested king. By the time the Fourth Blackfyre Rebellion, by the time they actually make it over, Egg's been on the throne for a couple of years now. He's got his footing by this point. And they land at Massey's Hook. They land at a spot that does not do them any favors. They are nowhere near anything worthwhile. So Aegon actually rides out personally with his two eldest sons, Duncan, the Prince of Dragonflies, and Jaehaerys II. Duncan, Prince of Dragonflies, is another example of a Targaryen who doesn't have the Targaryen look, not ceding the throne. He abdicates. But still, and of course, Sir Duncan the Tall comes with. And they immediately put the rebellion down. Duncan the Tall kills Daemon III. It's seen as a great victory for Egg. Not like this rebellion is put down. They don't lose very many people, but of the people they do lose, one is Tywin Lannister. And his death is what's going to allow for Tytos, who was a younger son, to become Lord. So the Fourth Blackfyre Rebellion is the thing that paves the way for Tywin Lannister to become Lord.
Interesting. So there was a more qualified Lannister.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. And this is that, but the Fourth Blackfyre Rebellion, even though it fizzles out very quickly, it still has a massive butterfly effect.
Sometimes the second son is Ned, and sometimes it's Tytos. Kelly Johnson says Eustace Osgrey was a Leo Blackfyre supporter, but he never scored 4 touchdowns in a single game like Al Bundy. Thank you, Kelly.
Yep. So, but yeah, that happens. And then we have this long lull of no Blackfyre rebellions. Bittersteel somehow, some way escapes a third time. Makes it back to... I don't know how they keep letting this guy get away. But he makes it back to Essos. And then he dies.
I think I got a theory for you, Tim. I'm sorry for interrupting, but Bittersteel, like Luke Skywalker, was never actually there. He was glass candle projecting into the battle the whole time, and that's why he keeps escaping.
Yeah.
It's a good trick.
If we ever get a Fire and Blood Part 2, George has a lot of explaining to do with how this guy keeps getting away. But anyway, he escapes, makes it back. Eventually, he dies. He dies in some nameless, endless skirmish in the disputed lands, fighting for somebody between Tyrosh and Myr. And then, and that seems like the end. We go almost a full 20 years, actually more, no, almost 25 years without a Blackfyre Rebellion. I know now of course, there are things of importance that happen in the meantime.
Hold on. There's some gay stuff that's happening here. Who's this Prince Daeron and his lover Jeremy Norridge that crushed a rebellion? I don't remember this. Yeah. Which Daeron is that?
That's Egg's son, Daeron.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Does he what happens to him?
So, while even though Egg is only dealing with one Blackfyre Rebellion, he still has other rebellions to deal with. We get this rebellion of the rat, the pig, and the hawk. And Prince Daeron Targaryen, this would be Egg's third son, he was the one that was supposed to marry Olenna Tyrell, Olenna Redwine, the one that she said was all twitchy. And she's like, I saw him and I pushed aside. But really, it's more like, no. We get the line that Egg's children are the ones who broke their marriage pact. So Olenna didn't break up with Daeron. Daeron broke up with Olenna. Let's set the record straight right there.
Well, but isn't Olenna implying that she...
Olenna implies that she is the one who turned him down for it to get with that Tyrell guy who walks off a cliff. But we're told that Egg's children all broke the marriage pacts that their mother set up. So it's who do you believe? And I think it's no, all of Egg's children broke their marriage pacts. That means that Daeron is the one who broke the pact with Olenna. He dumped her. She's trying to save face.
I would need to look up the quote, but I thought she made it sound like she maneuvered him into ending it or something along those lines. But
she said in the show, she says, I was to marry our Targaryen. It was all the rage back then. But when I saw him with his ridiculous silver hair and his twitchy impulses, I had to say no. But in real life, it's like, no, that's not how it went down. He dumped you.
Okay. Well, keep going and I'll see if I can find it easily. But
okay. But yeah, Daeron, the third son of Egg, he's gay. He has a lover, but they both die. So his lover is Jeremy Norridge. They were best friends who spent a lot of time together, as we're told. But they both die trying to put down this other non-Blackfyre rebellion that happens during Egg's reign. Then Egg also has to deal with the rebellion of the Laughing Storm, which is because Duncan, Prince of Dragonflies, was supposed to marry a Baratheon woman. He breaks that marriage pact to marry Jenny of Oldstones. He abdicates his position. That's why his younger brother becomes king. And so the Baratheons take that as insult. That becomes a trial by combat that Duncan the Tall has to put down. So it was something that was fermenting into a rebellion, but got snuffed out with a trial by combat. And then Egg's daughter has to pay the price for her brother making up the marriage. So instead of Duncan marrying his daughter, one of Egg's daughters marries his son, and that's the grandmother of Robert Baratheon. That's how he traces his Targaryen lineage.
Exactly right. And thank you, Ionic Calamity. And thank you, Kelly Johnson, also. So the quote here, gallant, yes, and charming, and very clean. He knew how to dress, and he knew how to smile, and he knew how to bathe. So this sounds a lot like Renly. And somehow he got the notion that made him fit to be king. Okay, she is talking about Renly. The Baratheons have always had some queer notions, to be sure. It comes from their Targaryen blood, I should think. They tried to marry me to a Targaryen once, but I soon put an end to that. Okay, so that's all she says.
Yeah, but she's lying.
It's interesting that she brings that up in the context of Renly, when, in fact, the Targaryen they tried to marry her to is gay.
Yeah, that's like Maud Mary saying, Olenna saw that he was the gay.
Yeah. So yeah, put an end to that. That just sounds like she didn't break off the betrothal. She probably like threatened him or scared the
Yeah.
bejesus out of him, and then he's like, "I don't want to marry her" or something like that. But who
Yeah.
knows? Who
It
knows?
could have I said it could have been a mutual break because of the line of all of Egg's children. Yeah. But then but
The
then
chat's
again,
great right now. Just I gotta say, go ahead.
you can't fire me, I quit.
No, the more you shower, the gayer you are. Because
Mm.
being clean is gay. It's so gay. Bathing,
But what ends up happening is so Lionel Baratheon, the Laughing Storm, like they end up making nice. His instead his son marries Egg's daughter Raelle. So Raelle, unfortunately, is a sister who has to pay for her brother's move, her brother's stupid action of breaking the marriage. But it's through that we get Robert and Stannis and Renly.
This is true. So we can. Oh, and then all right. So then 259 AC is Summer Hall. So at
Mm-hmm.
Summer Hall, King Egg dies. Duncan, one of his sons, dies. Dunk dies. And
So
also
Rhaegar is born.
Rhaegar's born. So Aegon the Fifth's second son, Jaehaerys the Second, is crowned. Who's his wife?
He marries his sister. So
Okay.
Jaehaerys breaks his marriage pact to marry. Who did Jaehaerys? Egg had like, I think Egg had like 5 or 6 kids. He had a lot of kids. Um, so
Sean's cracking me up in the chat. I can't.
okay, so Egg has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Egg has 5 kids, 3 sons and 2 daughters. The elder daughter, Shaera, Shaera. Jaehaerys marries his sister Shaera, and then the youngest daughter, Raelle, gets married off to a Baratheon.
Okay, that's interesting. Because
So that's how,
Cher is a comet name because of the Dothraki calling it Sharakia. So Shara
and
Sea
this,
Star is a comet
yeah,
star name, and
and this is how we get all these generations of unbroken Targaryen Blackwood blood that lead to Dany.
correct.
Jaehaerys marries his sister. His children are Aerys and Rhaella, and they're forced to marry, and then we get Rhaegar, Viserys, and Dany. So,
There it is.
yep, uninterrupted Targaryen Blackwood Dane blood.
And so a year after Summerhall, when the Targaryen dynasty seems weak and Jaehaerys II is a new king, we get the
Mhm.
final Blackfyre Rebellion, number 5 if you're counting, and that
Yep.
would be the War of the Nine Penny Kings.
Mhm. And the War of the Nine Penny Kings basically is the closest thing to a world war that this story has had. And the War of the Nine Penny Kings has tons of ramifications because the making of a lot of High Lords that we know in our current story happens here.
Can I pause
This,
it real quick? I'm going to put her back and give Goose a
Mhm.
treat and use the restroom, and I'll be right back. And you are going to tell the story of the Nine Penny Kings, and I'm going to turn you up so I can listen too. Thank you, Tim.
Sure. Okay. So the War of the Nine Penny Kings is started by this group known as the Band of Nine. This is a group of sellswords, merchant princes, pirates, just an all in all who's who of big criminals in Essos. One of whom is Meleys the Monstrous, Meleys Blackfyre, who at this point is now the commander general of the Golden Company. They make this fraternal pact at the Tree of Crowns in the Disputed Lands that everyone is going to have everyone else's back and we're all going to fight to further our goals. This is based off of the Peace of the Peach Garden from Romance of the Three Kingdoms. However, unlike Liu Bei, Gong Wu, and Zhang Fei, these guys are really not committed to each other the way those three were. I'd said this in my stream yesterday, and I'm sticking to it. The idea of honor among thieves is bullshit. This is not 9 guys swearing a brotherhood. This is 9 people all ready to stab the other 8 in the back the moment they see fit. That is how the Band of 9 really rolls. And Meleys the Monstrous obviously has the loftiest of goals of all of them, to take the entire to take the Iron Throne, to take the entirety of Westeros. So they start off in the Disputed Lands, and they actually take it. They conquer it. Now, this starts when Egg is still king, and Egg is not paying much attention to it. He thinks like, oh, this is just a band of sellswords. They're gonna get put down. One of the free cities is gonna take care of this. No. This is a problem that grows too out of control too quickly. Then Egg dies. And meanwhile, the Band of 9 is still gaining ground. They take Tyrosh. One of the Band of 9 members, Aliquo, becomes he sets himself up as a king of Tyrosh, and they take that. And then from there, they move to the Stepstones. And they're able to take that too. This is like the first time since Daemon Targaryen that the Stepstones have been conquered. Now they have this perfect launch-off point to invade Westeros. And they have a new, very sickly king, because Jaehaerys is weak physically. He's very he has a lot of physical ailments, but he is sharp of mind. And everyone, so they really like they underestimate him. That's the word. They really underestimate him. They see weak king, and it's like, no. He even though Jaehaerys is weak, he is still from his sickbed shaking his fist, saying, "I will fuck you up." And he has very capable people. And he is like, we're not even going to give you a Massey's Hook to land at. We're taking the war to you. And that is when the war, and so he sends out ships, and they go to the Stepstones. They use the Ironborn fleet. Quelling Greyjoy, the father of Euron, makes his name during this war by providing the ships to transport everyone to the Stepstones. This is the war where Aerys, the Mad King, will be knighted. Tywin will be knighted. Stephan Baratheon will step up after his father is slain. This is where they all meet and become best buddies. This is the only Blackfyre Rebellion that the North participates in. This is where Rickard Stark becomes acquainted with Stephan Baratheon and Jon Arryn.
Right.
Yeah. And so that has ramifications. There is Hoster Tully fights in this war. He has a Lord Baelish next to him. That Lord Baelish, we don't know his name, but he performs some service, and Hoster Tully rewards him by fostering his son, Peter Baelish.
Right. We went over that in the Littlefinger stream. I remember that. Yeah. How that origin came out. So it's interesting. Go ahead.
I was saying, that's why I said, like, the War of the Nine Penny Kings is like a world war. And just like the First World War, it will have so many ramifications for the future. And just like how the Second World War is a direct result of the First World War, the things that are happening in the story now, so much of it can be drawn back to the War of the Nine Penny Kings, because this is when we get the meeting of the great houses. Tywin Lannister, Rickard Stark, Jon Arryn. This is the first coming together of the 5 major houses.
And it's interesting that Jaehaerys II, like, they think he's a weak king, but, like, he actually, like you said, is smart and takes this aggressive move and snuffs it out. Because you get the feeling that Egg, like Bloodraven, is thinking more about mystical and magical affairs and less about these practical things. So, yeah, it's funny because on House of the Dragon, they're always talking about the Stepstones and are we ignoring them or are we dealing with them enough? So, yeah. Same thing here. So this is okay.
The War of the Nine Penny Kings is basically Planetos' World War I. It really is.
So is the Golden Company part of that?
Yeah, because Meleys is the captain general.
So that doesn't affect the Golden Company's reputation going forward. The fact that they once conquered Tyrosh and
apparently not, because they set up this guy Aliquo as a as a king, and he actually, even after the death of Meleys, Aliquo holds it for another 2 or 3 years before one of his mistresses kills him.
It's always the way of it. Always the way of it. Should marry them women.
Yeah. But Meleys and the war is brought to an end when Meleys is killed by Barristan Selmy.
Right, Barristan Selmy, and there's the whole thing about he wounds him his sword had taken a dozen, nicks, or he'd taken a dozen wounds and his sword was chipped, and Arthur Dayne let him pick up a new sword, and he's like, "Oh, it's your white sword that I want." And he's like, "Yeah, you shall have it then." And then he gave it to them. So that was famous duel, Meleys the Monstrous, and no, I got that confused. I'm thinking of but that's when he slew the Smiling Knight too, right?
Yes, Barristan also slays the Smiling Knight when the Kingswood Brotherhood is taken out.
Oh, and that's the Kingswood Brotherhood. When is that?
The Kingswood Brotherhood is led by Simon Toyne, and the Smiling Knight is an unnamed member of the Kingswood Brotherhood.
Okay, but so that is connected to all this because the Toynes have been part of the Blackfyres this whole time, right?
Yeah, because after the Kingswood Brotherhood falls apart, the remaining Toynes flee to Essos and eventually join up with the Golden Company.
Okay. Sorry.
And then over the years, and then after Meleys, after Meleys is killed, that is the end of the male line of Blackfyres. So the next commander generals of the Golden Company are no longer Blackfyres.
Okay, I realize I had completely mushed these two duels up in my head. It's Arthur Dayne who kills the Smiling Knight, and Barristan Selmy slays Meleys the Monstrous. Okay, I apologize. Yeah, that was a complete mush there. Okay, so got it. Now we are pretty much to the point where this is now setting up towards the main plot. Obviously, things are happening in Westeros, but as far as the Blackfyre thing goes, it really finally seems over. Meleys the Monstrous is dead. There are no more Blackfyres in the male line. We know now from Illyrio. And then, that pretty much brings us to...
And that brings us to our current... So there's a 25-year lull between the 4th and the 5th, and now we're on a 40-year lull. 260 to 300 where we are now, but they're not all gone. Those embers are still lit, and something's going to start a fire, and that's where we are now.
Sorry, just kind of clear my throat here. So, okay. So now we know we can fill in the blanks here. This is where we get into fAegon Blackfyre theory. So Sarah Blackfyre is kind of the key to this, right? Illyrio talks about sweet Sarah's hands. She was, how does he describe her? He says she's a sex worker, right? A Lycine pillow house.
Yeah, so the story of Illyrio is he marries a cousin of the Prince of Pentos. That's his first wife. She passes, we don't know how. In the time, he then finds a Lycine pillow house worker. He says he brought her home just to warm his bed, but he ends up falling in love with her. She had silver platinum hair and eyes like deep blue pools. He describes her as the same way as Tyrion describes the maiden who married Hugor of the Hill and started the Faith of the Seven.
And so, Sarah, do we think that this is a true story? In the sense that, do you think Sarah was, in fact, in a Lycine pillow house, and then, like, Illyrio figured out that she was actually a Blackfyre, or like he knew she was a Blackfyre and he went and got her out of there? Do you have any bearing on that? Are there any clues about that?
Well, this is where I dropped another pound of tinfoil yesterday of how does a Blackfyre end up in a Lycine pillow house in the first place? And the answer is the aftermath of the War of the Nine Penny Kings. So this is another Grey Waste Tim original theory. So in the aftermath of the Nine Penny Kings, I said Meleys had the loftiest goal, right? He is basically everything. all of what made for Maylis to take the Iron Throne with the Band of Nine hinges on him awarding a lot of people a lot of favors. I said it was writing checks you can't cash. And there's precedent for this because it's what Viserys, Daenerys' brother, did. Viserys offered Illyrio the role of Master of Coin if he got the throne. Viserys sells Daenerys to Khal Drogo to get Dothraki support. He's writing all these checks. Everything is hinging, though, for him to truly reward them. So much of this is hinging on him being able to take it, which obviously he's not going to do because he sucks. Illyrio is still fashioning his own plan on the backside, which is propping up this kid fAegon. And what I came to the conclusion to is that Viserys and the Dothraki were supposed to be a false flag operation. The goal was send Viserys over with Dothraki, and everyone's going to be like, oh God, the son of the Mad King and a foreign horde. But the Dothraki can't fight in Westeros. They're used to grassland fighting. They can't handle mountains and rivers and all of that. And there's that line in the show when Robert is discussing with Cersei, like, oh yeah, we can hold ourselves up in our castle. That's fine. But what are the people going to see? The people who are getting pillaged and massacred. They're going to see their lords and their king hiding while they suffer. That is why it's so integral for Varys to get rid for a weak king, weaker than Robert, to be on the throne. That's why they're pushing for this with Tommen. And then, so what happens is then the goal would then be for fAegon to come over with the Golden Company, the son of Rhaegar, the crown prince that most people loved, and the Golden Company. Yeah, they're but they're from Essos, but they're exiles. They're Westerosi. At the very least, they're not foreign like the Dothraki are. fAegon was more than likely going to lead this sort of mop-up operation, and that's what's going to put him on the throne. And then with Dany, the goal was most likely, assuming that she lived through all of this, then marry fAegon to Dany, and that's what brings together House Targaryen and House Blackfyre. So that's my idea of what the grand Varys's and Illyrio's grand plan. I think that was it.
I don't think that's tinfoil. I think that's. Yeah. I agree with that 100%. And I think the Dany part is the variable where, like, once she hatches those dragons and she is alive and gains power, then it's like, oh, well, we can marry her to fAegon. But yes, you're right. Originally, Dany is just an accessory to Viserys, and she is just the lure for Drogo. And the whole plan is to get Dothraki in Westeros causing problems so that fAegon can ride to the rescue. And as different permutations of the plan come about, they're basically always trying to achieve the same thing, which is a Westeros that needs a rescue so that fAegon can come and be the rescuer. And this is what Tyrion gets into when he's talking to fAegon about going to Westeros first, which is kind of, we're getting real close to that here. So,
But the question then again, but how does Sarah end up in that Lysine pillow house in the first place? Well, again, if Viserys is making all these promises, Maylis was probably doing the same thing. He would have had to keep the Band of Nine, these criminals and pirates and merchant princes on his side. He would have had to be making a lot of promises. So when Maylis dies and the male Blackfyre line ends, but we still have all these women, any daughters, any nieces, any sisters of Maylis, what happens to them? Well, the Band of 8 now is going to be looking at them like, hey, your brother, uncle, whoever, he made a lot of promises that we can't cash in on. And one of the Band of 9 is a Lysini. He's an ancestor of Salador San. How do Blackfyres end up in a Lysini pillow house? They were probably sold into sexual slavery. The Band of 8 now cashing in on whatever they could after Maylis dies. That's how you end up with Sarah Blackfyre in a Lysine pillow house.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. That makes a lot of sense. There are different ways that one can fall through the cracks and end up in a situation like that, but that specifically makes sense with all the promises and stuff coming due. Yeah, that fits.
Yeah. So I think what happened is Illyrio. The best lies are built on a foundation of truth. And I do think so when Illyrio loses his first wife and goes to this Lycene pillow house, basically looking for a comfort woman, and comes across Sarah, I actually take him at his word that he brought her home, that she was just supposed to be a means of temporary comfort, but he ended up falling in love with her. And when he finds out like what her true lineage is, that becomes the driving force of, I love you so much, I'm going to get you back everything that your family lost.
Oh, okay. That makes it make sense to me. So it's not just that Illyrio is trying to put his son on the throne for vanity's sake.
Love is the death of duty.
Oh, that's kind of romantic for old Illyrio, the yellow whale. He's doing it all for his that works. That's interesting.
And it's also said like when Illyrio marries Sarah, the gates of the Prince of Pentos were closed off to him. And I've compared Illyrio to Rhaego Draws, another Pentoshi master of coin, which is what Illyrio would have gotten under Viserys. This is a man who has been snubbed by the aristocracy for reasons because they looked down upon him. For Rhaego Draws, they looked down upon him because he was a poor man he was a self-made man. For Illyrio, he's looked down upon for marrying a sex worker. Illyrio, for his own part, was also a self-made man. Because before he becomes a magister, he's a sellsword, living by his blade.
If Illyrio weren't such a disgusting pig, and I don't mean that because he's large, I mean that because he has sex slaves on his mansion and the way he talks about Daenerys and a few other things, but he's a lot more likable now. Like, that's cool. Like, I don't like aristocracy myself. So, like, so now, I dig that. He fell in love with a sex worker, and then he's like, oh, I'm going to restore your family line. Like, that's kind of sick, actually.
So now we got to connect Varys to this. We know that Varys and Illyrio are basically best friends, but there is the Varys secret Targaryen. And I think it's Varys secret Blackfyre. Varys shaves his head. We don't know what color his hair is. That's his egg connection. If Varys were to let his hair grow, would it be silver platinum? Varys is from Lys, just like Sarah. The male Blackfyres have died out, but we've had 40 years now for more boy Blackfyres to be born. Varys, being from Lys, being a poor street urchin, set up for me seems to be brother of this sex worker. So that would mean that Varys is more than just Illyrio's best friend. He would be his brother-in-law, his good brother. And then someone else in my chat yesterday pointed out, Varys plus Illyrio, Valyrian.
Kind of like Cat and Elaine, with Arya being Cat and Sansa being Elaine, makes Catelyn. That makes perfect sense. Also because it makes sense about how tightly Varys and Illyrio trust each other. It's not just because they were both street urchins. Like,
so this would be not only would it if this
they're united by
I'm
Sarah.
Right on all this, if I'm right on this, not only does that mean FAegon is Illyrio's son, that makes him Varys' nephew. His pet Project King is also his own blood.
Yes. Correct. That is the theory that I believe in, but that was better explained than I've ever heard it.
Mm-hmm. And so the last time we see Illyrio, which will be the next the next time I go back to Tyrion 3, I got mixed up yesterday. I thought they left Pentos and met up with Griff all in the same chapter. No, Tyrion 3 is when we first meet Griff and fAegon. But the last time we see Illyrio, the line is, Tyrion looks back, his shoulders are slumped, he looks small, he looks sad. It really seems like a father. He even says, like, I wish to see the boy. He refers to fAegon as, never was there more a nobler lad. He speaks of him in such endearing terms. And then there's the fact that there's all these children clothes at Illyrio's manse, but no little kid running around. This very much seems like a father who misses his son.
Right, he holds on to these things as keepsakes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this all fits because Illyrio does have this very sappy part of his personality. And it's always been obvious to me that fAegon is his son. But this just like the idea that he's trying to restore what was taken from Sarah's family. Like that really, and that's perfect George Martin story. I mean, that's
Yeah.
exactly the kind of thing he writes about. So,
And if they can manipulate it so that fAegon also marries Dany, and they can close up the Targaryen Blackfyre rift and bring everyone under one roof, that's reconciliation. But horrible things are going to be done to make it happen, like Varys killing Kevin Lannister.
so let's bring in, and I'm going to give up and go get Cleo again because she won't stop screaming. So Jon Connington, how does he come into this? We know that he loses the Battle of the Bells because he's not Tywin enough. He doesn't just massacre the entire town to kill Robert Baratheon. That's what he thinks Tywin would have done. So next time, he's going to massacre that town. That's where Jon Con's at. How does he get roped into being the false foster father of fAegon?
And this is, again, love is the death of duty. Jon Con is gay, and he is gay for Rhaegar, and Varys knows this. We got to remember that Varys has been around in his position for a long time now, since the days of the Mad King. And in that time, Aerys the Mad King had 4 hands, one of which was Jon Connington, who has a crush on the Mad King's son. So what happens is after Jon Con loses the battles of the Bells, and Robert Baratheon gets away because Jon Con did not use scorched earth tactics, he is fired. He is lucky in that respect that all Aerys did was fire him and not murder him, but he is fired. And the story that we get of Jon Con is that in the aftermath of Robert's rebellion, he flees across the narrow sea, takes up service as a sellsword, and drinks himself to death. That is the story that we're fed. And Jon Con, again, the means of how far are we willing to go for the people we love, Jon Con allows this fabricated story to go. He allows people to believe that he died a worthless drunk in a foreign land in order to facilitate the real plans that Varys has for him, which is raise this kid who he is told is Rhaegar's son. That is how Jon Con's roped into it. Oh, we got both birds today.
Yeah, we got both birds. I started to feel good. People always ask for Goose. I'm going to give him a couple minutes to scream at us before I have to put him back. But this is Goose. Hi, buddy.
And so,
you want to say anything? Hi, Goose. Oh, are you hungry? Goose, you hungry? There you go. It's yummy. Chewing sounds. There you go. He doesn't have lips and he can smack his lips. Let me get him a nut. Thank you for explaining this. I'm doing my best, guys. The birds have been on vacation and they just got him back and they're very want to be up in my business right now. So, Goose?
Is he the one that says touchdown?
Is it a touchdown? Is it a touchdown? There you go. Good Goose. All right.
Yay, Goose. Okay. So anyway, so it actually lends more credence to what I had said about Illyrio and Sarah when we mirror that with Jon Con. Again, the lengths that we're going to go for the people that we love. Jon Con willing to let this terrible story about him go about, while in reality it's because he's raising what he believes is the son of the child of the man that he actually loved.
Yeah, so let me break it. I like how you explained that because just as we're talking about Illyrio being motivated by love and all that, he understands him and Varys both. Like, you can motivate other people and take advantage of other people's love. So this is why we can only be so sympathetic with this cool story of Illyrio, the underclass guy marrying the sex worker and flipping the bird to the establishment. It's like, he's definitely a ruthless dude. And what they do to Jon Con is pretty they definitely use him 100% with no concern for what it costs. And yeah, I like how you pinpointed that. taking advantage of this unrequited love to get him to raise somebody that's not even his non-boyfriend's son. It's really clever writing. I mean, this is why this is fun to go over. Like, this is a tangled web. And thank you so much, Tim, for on behalf of everybody in the chat. Thank you for coming on and explaining this coherently, because I definitely feel like I have a better idea of how this all leads. But you see why we have to go through all 5 Blackfyre rebellions to get to the 6th. Because all the tools that they're working with, including people's grudges and hurts and things, and the Golden Company itself, they were all created during these various Blackfyre rebellions.
And that's the thing, like, George is writing true to life, because you think of how many of our modern day problems stem from wars that happened decades, if not centuries ago. The constant butterfly effect that every one of these rebellions has still permeates a century later.
Yeah, it's layers of puppet strings. It's like you think of one set of hands in a puppet, but then there's more puppet strings above those puppet strings, and it's just like it's very tangled web. So the next part of this I have is grown from a bean. So this is Tyrion's line. Let's go ahead and read this Tyrion quote, because I want to make sure I get into it. But I think what we'll do, Tim, is we'll come back on a different day and read both of those Jon Connington chapters. I was going to dip into those today, but we're already coming up on
2.5 hours.
Yeah, exactly. So let me pull this one up in my... Go ahead.
I said, like, we're almost 3 hours in and we're only just now getting to Jon Con.
It's okay, though, because I like the pace that we were going at, explaining all that. That was working for me. So, yeah. I'm okay with it. It's a big thing. It's a 6th rebellion. Okay, so... Let me see whose dialogue is here. Halden Halfmaester, Tyrion. This is a Tyrion POV. You can do Halden Halfmaester. We'll figure it out as we go. Young Griff's greeting was less effusive. The princeling was in a sullen mood. Oh, and this is they're waiting on the boat while other people go to is it Selhorys? Yeah. And they're saying, young Griff, you've got to hide, and Tyrion, you've got to stay on the boat too. So young Griff's not happy about that. The princeling was in a sullen mood, angry that he'd been forced to remain on the Shy Maid instead of going ashore with Yandri and Ysilla. We only want to keep you safe, Lemore told him. These are unsettled times.
Halden Halfmaester explained, on the way down from the Sorrows to Selhorse, I always pictured him Squidward, just letting you know. We thrice glimpsed riders moving south along the river's eastern shore. Dothraki. Once they were so close we could hear the bells tinkling in their braids, and sometimes at night their fires could be seen beyond the eastern hills. We passed warships as well. Volantine river galleys crammed with slave soldiers. The Triarchs fear an attack upon Selhorys plainly.
Tyrion understood that quick enough. Alone amongst the major river towns, Selhorys stood upon the eastern bank of the Rhoyne, making it much more vulnerable to the horse lords than its sister towns across the river. Even so, it is a small prize. If I were Khal, I would feint at Selhorys, let the Volantines rush to defend it, then swing south and ride hard for Valentis itself. So Tyrion just can't help playing war chess wherever he goes. I know how to use a sword, young Griff was insisting.
Even the bravest of your forebears kept his Kingsguard close about him in times of peril. Lemore had changed out of her Septa's robes into garb more befitting the wife or daughter of a prosperous merchant. Tyrion watched her closely. He had sniffed out the truth beyond the dyed blue hair of Griff and young Griff easily enough, and Yandri and Ysilla seemed to be no more than they claimed to be, whilst Duck was somewhat less. Lemore, though, who is she really? Why is she here? Not for gold, I'd judge. What is this prince to her? Was she ever a true septa? Halden took note of her change of garb as well. We are to make of this sudden loss of faith. I preferred you in your septa's robes, Lamore.
I preferred her naked, said Tyrion. Lamore gave him a reproachful look that wasn't reproachful at all, by the way. She's a tremendous flirt, which is why we know she's not a septa. That is because you have a wicked soul. Septa's robes scream of Westeros and might draw unwelcome eyes upon us. She turned back to Prince Aegon. You are not the only one who must needs hide. The lad did not seem appeased. The perfect prince, but still half a boy for all that, with little and less experience of the world and all its woes. Prince Aegon, said Tyrion, since we're both stuck aboard this boat, perhaps you will honor me with a game of Cyvasse to while away the hours. The prince gave him a wary look. I am sick of Cyvasse. Sick of losing to a dwarf, you mean? I should let you do either Tyrion or fAegon, so this conversation is intelligent.
I think you want to be fAegon.
I do. I'm going to give you John the Fiddler, so go ahead and take Tyrion from here, then.
That pricked the lad's pride, just as Tyrion had known it would. Go fetch the board in pieces. This time, I mean to smash you.
Go ahead and read most of this narrator stuff so that people don't hear my bird screaming. Because this is Tyrion's inner monologue here anyway, so.
They played on deck, sitting cross-legged behind the cabin. Young Griff arrayed his army for attack, with dragon, elephants, and heavy horse up front. A young man's formation, as bold as it is foolish. He risks all for the quick kill. He let the prince have first move. Halden stood behind them, watching the play. When the prince reached for his dragon, Tyrion cleared his throat. I would not do that if I were you. It is a mistake to bring your dragon out too soon. He smiled innocently. Your father knew the dangers of being overbold.
Did you know my true father?
Well, I saw him twice or thrice, but I was only 10 when Robert killed him, and mine own sire had me hidden underneath a rock. No, I cannot claim I knew Prince Rhaegar, not as your false father did. Lord Connington was the prince's dearest friend, was he not?
Young Griff pushed a lock of blue hair out of his eyes. They were squires together at King's Landing.
A true friend, our Lord Connington. He must be, to remain so fiercely loyal to the grandson of the king who took his lands and titles and sent him into exile, and he got off lucky. A pity about that. Elsewise, Prince Rhaegar's friend might have been on hand when my father sacked King's Landing, to save Prince Rhaegar's precious little son from getting his royal brains dashed out against a wall.
The lad flushed. That was not me, I told you. That was some tanner son from Pisswater Bend whose mother died birthing him. His father sold him to Lord Varys for a jug of Arbor gold. Varys gave the Pisswater boy to my lady mother and carried me away.
Oh, and then this is that lies in Arbor gold stuff. So that's another sign that this is all made up. Tyrion moved his elephants, and when the Pisswater prince was safely dead, the eunuch smuggled you across the narrow sea to his fat friend the cheesemonger, who hid you on a pole boat and found an exile lord willing to call himself your father. It does make for a splendid story, and the singers will make much of your escape once you take the Iron Throne, assuming that our fair Daenerys takes you for her consort.
She will. She must.
Must? Tisk tisk. That is not a word queens like to hear. You are her perfect prince, agreed, bright and bold and comely as any maid could wish. Daenerys Targaryen is no maid, however. She is the widow of a Dothraki Khal, a mother of dragons and a sacker of cities, Aegon the Conqueror with teats. She may not prove as willing as you wish.
She'll be willing. Prince Aegon sounded shocked. It was plain that he had never before considered the possibility that his bride-to-be might refuse him. You don't know her. He picked up his heavy horse and put it down with a thump.
The dwarf shrugged. I know that she spent her childhood in exile, impoverished, living on dreams and schemes, running from one city to the next, always fearful, never safe, friendless but for a brother who was by all accounts half mad, a brother who sold her maidenhead to the Dothraki for the promise of an army. I know that somewhere out upon the grass her dragons hatched, and so did she. I know she is proud. How not? What else was left but her pride? I know she is strong. How not? The Dothraki despise weakness. If Daenerys had been weak, she would have perished with Viserys. I know she is fierce. Astapor, Yunkai, Marine, all proof of that. She has crossed the grasslands in the Red Waste, survived assassins and conspiracies, and fell sorceries, grieved for a brother and a husband and a son, trod the cities of the slavers to dust beneath her dainty sandaled feet.
Okay, so
Now,
Tim,
yep.
so pause right there. I want to make a point before we get to the fun part of this and start laughing uproariously. Tyrion is doing similar kind of analysis here that we do when we're looking at Fire and Blood. And I'm going to talk, but look at Goose as I talk because he's quieter when I look at him. But when we read Fire and Blood, we don't know much about these personalities, right? We're reading the details of their life events, and we're trying to extrapolate, Goose, what kind of people must have been behind these events. What kind of person would do a thing like this, make this choice, etc. And so Tyrion is essentially doing this exercise with fAegon. He's saying, well, she did that. The Dothraki despise weakness, so we can assume that she, you can fill in even, you could say even more. Not only is she strong, but she is culturally adaptive. She must have learned the ways of the Dothraki, which we know she did, but like you can assume that, you can figure that out. So that tells you something about Daenerys. She's not likely to be a bigoted person. She's somebody who adapted to a foreign culture. So like you can figure out a lot about somebody just from the broad stroke events. And that's why House of the Dragon is very interesting as a writer's exercise to me, because Ryan Condal and George and the rest of the writers, they're taking these events and now they're trying to ask that very question. Like Bela, for example. We only really know Bela from her, not her final act, but the one thing that, major thing that she does in the dance against, Aegon and Sunfire and all that. So they've taken that one event and a couple of descriptions of her and then asked, well, what kind of role would she, if she had a bigger role earlier in the story, what kinds of things would she be doing? So I just wanted to point that out, that Tyrion is essentially doing that analysis here on Daenerys in front of fAegon, and he's sort of teaching fAegon how to do it. So it's a fascinating passage right there. And of course, now he's going to pivot and talk about showing up palm in hand or whatever. So go ahead and...
Yeah. Now, how do you suppose this queen will react when you turn up with your begging bowl in hand and say, "Good morrow to you, Auntie. I am your nephew, Aegon, returned from the dead. I've been hiding on a pole boat all my life, but now I've washed the blue dye from my hair, and I'd like a dragon, please. And oh, did I mention, my claim to the Iron Throne is stronger than your own."
Aegon's mouth twisted in fury. "I will not come to my aunt a beggar. I will come to her a kinsman with an army."
A small army. There's that there. That's made him good and angry. The dwarf could not help but think of Joffrey. I have a gift for angering princes. Queen Daenerys has a large one, and no thanks to you. Tyrion moved his crossbows.
This is...
I'd like a dragon, please.
Yeah, I made this a while ago for my Danny video. And so, yeah, I got to get as much use out of my memes as I can. But this is the scene that I'm thinking about here. It's just like, "Hello, Auntie. I'd like a dragon, please. I see you've got 3. I'd like one." This is Elfin Fen. I misspelled. Sorry, 1 second, Tim. I misspelled the artist. It's Elfin Fen here. But yeah, I love this picture of fAegon. We use this for the cover of our fAegon stream from a couple of months back. But it's just like, "Hey, everyone, I'm here. I'm here to be king."
Yeah. Well, I guess what I said was like, get in line, because Jon needs a dragon, and Euron wants one too. We got four potential riders and only 3 dragons. We don't have enough to go around.
This is She-Ra Daenerys. That's a good call. This is Kirsty Carter on the She-Ra Daenerys. It's I just like how huge she is. It's very, the Conqueror Daenerys artwork. It's how I use that. So I do like Drogon's big scary face here. It's pretty funny. Anyway, so Aegon's I'll come to her, kids him with an army, a small army that's made him good and angry. Say what you want. She will be my bride, Goose. Lord Connington will see to it. I trust him as much as if he were my own blood.
Perhaps you should be the fool instead of me. Trust no one, my prince. Not your chainless maester, not your false father, not the gallant duck, nor the lovely Lemore, nor these other fine friends who grew you from a bean. Above all, trust not the cheesemonger, nor the spider, nor this little dragon queen you mean to marry. All that mistrust will sour your stomach and keep you awake by night, 'tis true. But better that than the long sleep that does not end. The dwarf pushed his black dragon across a range of mountains. But what do I know? Your false father is a great lord, and I am just some twisted little monkey man. Still, I do things differently.
So that passage right there is like poetry. That whole thing is poetry. Just not the gallant duck, nor the lovely Lemore, nor these other fine friends who grew you from a bean. Above all, trust not the cheesemonger, nor the spider, nor this little dragon queen you mean to marry. Like this, you could set this out in line by line prose here, like a poem. And this, I feel like one of the reasons why we like Tyrion and Jaime, despite the fact that they are bad people, especially Tyrion, is because they are George's truest voice. He's given these characters the best, the best articulation. They are a little bit cynical, nobody's fool or whatever. Well, Tyrion's a little bit foolish, but like they break things down accurately with a little bit of wit. And this is kind of George's real personality showing through. So it's some of the most like expressive dialogue comes from those two characters, I've noticed. So can you guys hear the touchdowns? Yeah. So anyways, I just wanted to point that out. Like when Tyrion or Jaime gets going with a monologue, it's always like some of the best prose. So that got the boys' attention. How differently?
If I were you, I'd go west instead of east, land in Dorne and raise my banners. The Seven Kingdoms will never be more ripe for conquest than they are right now. A boy king sits the Iron Throne. The North is in chaos. The Riverland's a devastation. A rebel holds Storm's End and Dragonstone. When winter comes, the realm will starve. And who remains to deal with all of this? Who rules the little king? Who rules the Seven Kingdoms? Why, my own sweet sister. There is no one else. My brother Jaime thirsts for battle, not for power. He's run from every chance he's had to rule. My uncle Kevin would make a passably good regent if someone pressed the duty on him, but he will never reach for that. The gods shaped him to be a follower, not a leader. Well, the gods and my lord father. Mace Tyrell could grasp the scepter gladly, but mine own kin are not like to step aside and give it to him. And everyone hates Stannis. Who does that leave? Why, only Cersei.
That's okay. So, this is the Cersei monologue that's about to happen. Another great section of prose, just beautiful. But everyone hates Stannis. It's like the anti everyone loves Raymond. I can't let that go by the board. And everyone hates Stannis. Reminds you of Renly. The whole realm denies it, from Dorne to the Wall.
Yeah.
Poor Stannis.
Unborn children deny it from their mother's wombs.
Yes, just not happening. Yeah, we love you, Stannis. We love you, sort of, in that way that you love Stannis. Okay, so go ahead. Tell us who Cersei is, really, Tyrion.
Westeros is torn and bleeding, and I do not doubt that even now my sweet sister is binding up the wounds with salt. Cersei is as gentle as King Maegor, as selfless as Aegon the Unworthy, and as wise as Mad Eris. She never forgets a slight, real or imagined. She takes caution for cowardice and dissent for defiance. And she is greedy, greedy for power, for honor, for love. Tommen's rule is bolstered by all the alliances that my Lord Father built so carefully, but soon enough she will destroy them, every one. Land and raise your banners, and men will flock to your cause, lords great and small folk too. But do not wait too long, my prince. That moment will not last. The tide that lifts you now will soon recede. Be certain you reach Westeros before my sister falls and someone more competent takes her place.
But, Prince Aegon said, without Daenerys and her dragons, how could we hope to win?
You do not need to win, Tyrion told him. All you need to do is raise your banners, rally your supporters, and hold until Daenerys arrives to join her strength to yours.
You said she might not have me.
Perhaps I overstate it. She may take pity on you, and when you come begging for her hand. Do you want to wager your throne upon a woman's whim? Go to Westeros, though. Ah, then you are a rebel, not a beggar. Bold, reckless, a true scion of House Targaryen, walking in the footsteps of Aegon the Conqueror, a dragon. And I hear she likes bad boys.
That checks out. That is correct.
I told you, I know our little queen. Let her hear that her brother Rhaegar's murdered son is still alive, and that this brave boy has raised the dragon standard of her forebears in Westeros once more. That he is fighting a desperate war to avenge his father and reclaim the Iron Throne for House Targaryen, hard pressed on every side. And she will fly to your side as fast as wind and water can carry her. You are the last of her line, and this mother of dragons, this breaker of chains, is above all a rescuer. The girl who drowned the slaver cities in blood rather than leave strangers to their chains can scarcely abandon her own brother's son in this hour of peril. And when she reaches Westeros and meets you for the first time, you will meet as equals, man and woman, not queen and supplicant. How could she help but love you then, I ask you? Smiling, he seized his dragon, flew it across the board. I hope your grace will pardon me. Your king is trapped. Death in 4.
The prince stared at the playing board. My dragon
is too far away to save you. You should have moved her to the center of the battle.
But you said...
I lied. Trust no one, and keep your dragon close.
Young Griff jerked to his feet and kicked over the board. Sivas pieces flew in all directions, bouncing and rolling upon the deck of the Shy Maid. Pick those up, the boy commanded.
He may well be a Targaryen after all. If it please your grace. Tyrion got down on his hands and knees and began to crawl about the deck, gathering up pieces.
Okay.
It was close. Yep.
Oh, yeah, no, we're done. That's it.
Okay.
So, yeah, a couple things happened there. First of all, Tyrion is sussing out the plan that Illyrio has made instinctively, which we saw Tyrion do when he was with Illyrio, as far as, like, Illyrio gave him as little information as possible, and the game is to see if Tyrion can sort of figure out what's going on. And so here he's pointing out, he's like, look, this turkey is ripe, is ready to eat. I roasted, I guess. I mixed my metaphors because I think I want to put birds in the oven right now. Will you please calm down? That'd be nice. Thank you. It's Cleo. She can't stand that Goose has a tiny bit of freedom. She's now insanely jealous. In any case, Tyrion has figured out how the situation that has been set up. And he's like, this is ready. It's ready. It needs to be rescued as much as it ever possibly could be. We don't even need Dothraki. We have Cersei instead. We have empowered Cersei. And we see that by the end of Dance, like Varys sees that too. I mean, they can see the same thing. Tyrion's like, oh yeah, if someone pressed Kevin into duty, he'd be a competent manager. And so Illyrio's like, or Varys is like, oh, there's the one competent person who might be able to stabilize things. I will give him a crossbow bolt for his trouble, and explain my plan in his dying moments like a true supervillain, monologuing to a dead man, because that's the only person he can brag to, someone who's dying. But yeah, that's they see the same thing, which is that putting Cersei in power leaves Westeros in need of a rescue to almost the same degree that it would be with a Dothraki invasion running around. So that is what we think of Cersei. Tyrion also doing more character analysis on Daenerys, doing better character analysis on Daenerys than some YouTube channels, whom I will not name. This girl is a rescuer above all. Yeah, no, she's not a master. She's a rescuer. She's a revolutionary. The girl who drowned the slaver cities in blood rather than leave strangers to their chains. Tyrion can see it from hundreds of miles away. Okay? Like, yes, she's a revolutionary. She didn't just buy Unsullied and leave. She sat there and fought a revolution to try to free people from bondage. So, ergo, you can draw a lot of assumptions about her character from someone who, because there's a certain kind of person that does something like that. So just love that. I love that for Tyrion. He should start a YouTube channel, you know?
Yep.
So that is, and that's, you can see, I mean, Tyrion basically just explained the whole, or not the whole, but like a good part of the Sixth Blackfyre Rebellion right there with Jon Connington and how they grew him from a bean. And, it's going to make a great story. How everyone thought you were dead and you weren't dead. And I can hear the song now. Like, okay, this has, he smells it. He's like, this could work. So now the question is he sabotaging fAegon here or not? Like, what is your read on that? Because his advice sounds pretty good, but he's also saying, don't trust me. I just lied to you about this chess game, but here's my advice. Yeah. So I think that he's mostly just pointing out political realities and leaving fAegon to make of it what he will. But this does lead them to go ahead and change their plan and head to Westeros. So yeah, what is your take on this? And I'll come up with the poll question. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but what's your take on Tyrion's motivations with this advice that he's giving?
Tyrion is definitely trolling. He really is.
Okay. It's a twisted monkey man. It's a troll. It's a troll.
Yeah. And this is what I talked about in the stream I did yesterday, is this darker path that Tyrion is going down that the show did not have the balls to do because they wanted to keep Tyrion likable. But Tyrion is taking a Littlefinger direction in things of sowing chaos because of how much he hates Cersei right now. And that's the thing. It's something I also talked about earlier. It was with Gray Area when I did Obsidian Nights with her about how Cersei and Tyrion could work great together. And this was back in Clash of Kings. If they could just get over one another's animosity towards one another, they could actually steer the Joffrey ship to success if they really, really wanted to. But neither one can let down their ego or their hatred for one another to allow that to happen. And as time has passed, that feeling has only grown and grown. The animosity from Cersei towards Tyrion and Tyrion right back at her. And this is what we're seeing, like the culmination of that. You're muted. Mute it.
You're reminding me, I want to go back and read some of those chapters. You're reminding me of how much I wanted them to work it out. Even though Cersei is completely detestable and Tyrion is like half detestable at this point, you can feel them almost like lowering their guard and fainting at like teamwork. An appreciation for each other just a little. Like, we know what Tyrion thinks of Cersei, but he's still trying to work it out with her. I can really relate to this. Like, sometimes your inner monologue will be really critical of people. And then when you're with them in person, you find yourself trying to throw them a bone, trying to be charitable, trying to because it's like it's just, most people at least have that tendency. It's like when you're in person with somebody, you try to work things out. You try to establish an understanding. And so it's just really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, because there is a moment. Again, I did this with check out Gray Area, of course, Obsidian Knights. I did a Tyrion chapter in Clash, and it's this moment where it's when Tyrion shows up with the letter from Tywin saying, "You're going to be handed my steed," and there's this moment where after she tells the small council to get out, and it's just her and Tyrion. And Tyrion's like, well, Catelyn Stark got it in her head that I tried to kill her son. And Cersei's like, well, she got it in her head that I killed Jon Arryn. How did they come to that? And it's like, that was the moment. That was the moment right there where they should have just looked at each other and had that aha moment of someone's in cahoots against us. But they never do, because neither can look past one's hatred for the other to get on the same page.
You're right. They might have been able to suss out the Baelish thing. That's an interesting observation. Yeah.
They had them. Yeah, it was right there, and they lost it.
And plus, I just love teamwork and putting grudges aside. And like I said, even though Cersei's a terrible person and all that, they almost started working together there. Yeah, interesting. So in any case, now the Cersei is empowered, and it's like her and Qyburn running the show, and Lady Tanda, right? Lady Tanda Stokeworth and Ungregor. I mean, who else is in charge?
The guy who keeps coughing up blood, who's supposed to be the master of cold.
Oh, Giles the Cougher. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cersei's gonna get to blowing up the Sept pretty soon. That's for sure something they got from George. I think so.
Yeah. And I agree, like chat's saying, if I think too, if the showrunners had the spine to do this, I think Peter Dinklage would have gone down with Dark Tyrion and done great work with it.
There's no question.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question. Yeah, it's heartbreaking. He could have, when you look at how he did with the speech at the trial, where he turns on the crowd of King's Landing. Yeah, I mean he would have eaten up all the Dark Tyrion stuff.
Peter Dinklage and I'm blanking on his name, but the actor who played Euron, they were robbed. They were robbed of such good moments because of the way they changed their characters.
So real quick, I just want to read, there's a couple of symbolic passages which refer to fAegon that might give us some insight into where this is going, which is how I want to wrap up the stream here. So, the Old Inn, some call it. There has been an inn there, and this is Maribald talking, for many hundreds of years, though this inn was only raised during the reign of the first Jaehaerys, the king who built the King's Road. Jaehaerys and his queen slept there during their journeys, it is said. For a time, the inn was known as the Two Crowns in their honor, until one innkeep built a bell tower and changed it to the Bellringer Inn. Later, and this is like tour guide Maribald here, later it passed to a crippled knight named Long John Heddle, who took up ironworking when he grew too old to fight. He forged a new sign for the yard, a three-headed dragon of black iron that he hung from a wooden post. The beast was so big it had to be made into a dozen pieces, joined with rope and wire. When the wind blew, it would clank and clatter, so the inn became known far and wide as the Clanking Dragon. "Is the dragon sign still there?" asked Podrick. "No," said Maribald. "When the smith's son was an old man, a bastard son of the fourth Aegon rose up in rebellion against his true-born brother and took for his sigil a black dragon. These lands belonged to the Lord Darry then, and his lordship was fiercely loyal to the king. The sight of the black iron dragon made him wroth, so he cut down the post, hacked the sign into pieces, and cast them into the river. One of the dragon's heads washed up on the quiet isle many years later, though by that time it was red with rust." So, there's two levels here of symbolic interpretation. The first level is the one that the fandom got, which is a red dragon disguised as a black dragon, or black dragon disguised as a red dragon. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the Blackfyre sigil is a black dragon, but now it's been turned red, and then it washed up on an island. So fAegon is a black dragon, a Blackfyre. He is hiding under the cloak of Targaryen, and he's going to wash up on Dragonstone or on, in Westeros. Now, the second layer of this is that there's another thing that washes up on the Quiet Isle, and those are Rhaegar's rubies.
Mm-hmm.
And 6 have washed up so far, and they're waiting for the 7th, right?
Yeah. And then also, actually, third layer, Long John Heddle is the man who crafts this Iron Dragon. Tom Heddle, Mystery Knight, is one of the Blackfyre supporters. He's the one that Dunk kills near the end of the story.
So it's definitely a Blackfyre sign. And then the idea that, like, the last ruby that washes up, it's like, well, it's actually this Blackfyre sign, kind of. Like, that's what you get instead. It's a fake son of Rhaegar. Thank you, Emery Lorch, with the contribution there. So, never knows in the chat. And then, so yeah, this is one of the clues, just that he is a Blackfyre. But that rust, like a rusty dragon.
Mm-hmm.
It's, we also saw with the, I skipped also on the chess. So, not the chess, the Syvas. So the whole Death in 4, he's like, oh, you should totally go to Westeros, and then Dany will get there and be your friend. By the way, you're dead.
Yeah.
Here's my black dragon to kill you. So
yeah, checkmate.
So is fAegon going to get eaten by Balerion when he tries to ride him? Is that
and that? Yeah, that becomes one of these questions. That goes back to, again, like when I was talking before I started streaming, when I was writing essays in my fAegon essay, Parallel Kings, Princes, and Pretenders. That is the potential. Does this become a inverted Rhaenyra Aegon II situation? Because of all of Aegon's connections to past Targaryen kings.
Yeah, I think that's where it's going, because I don't think Dany's going to get eaten by a dragon.
Yeah.
So it's probably she's got to slay the lie of the Mummer's dragon, which is the other quote we need to read. But
yeah, if the Slayer of Lies is because Dany's dragon eats the fake dragon, yeah, that follows through.
Now the question is, if it's to be a dance of the dragons, fAegon would have to get a dragon. So
yeah.
Will
he be a true dance? Yeah.
Will he ride one of the other dragons somehow? Obviously, a Blackfyre is a Targaryen, really, as far as blood goes. So he could potentially just bond with one of Dany's dragons. Mm-hmm. Do you think that will happen?
It is a potential, because we know that there's Daemon Blackfyre Jr. had dragon dreams. That's the setup for the Mystery Knight. In the scrapped Tyrion chapter, before George split Feast and Dance, when Tyrion was sitting in on a history lesson with Hall and Halfmaester, it's implied that Meleys the Monstrous was having dragon dreams. George completely threw that out, but we also know that George never truly tosses anything out. He just recycles them in new places. So even though that Tyrion history lesson thing never made it into Feast, that doesn't mean that George isn't going to weave it in somewhere later. And right here, we just saw Tyrion give fAegon like a whole civics lesson.
And just to go back to the rubies, to make clear, so the idea is that Rhaegar's rubies are blood red. And when Rhaegar is killed, his rubies fall into the stream, as well as his blood. So the idea of 6 rubies washing up, and they're hoping for a 7th because they like the faith of the 7, that's Rhaegar's blood washing up. So it's like, oh, there's one more Rhaegar's son to come, and he's actually potentially going to be the 7th Aegon, if Jon is Aegon, because fAegon would be the 6th. He would be Aegon the 6th if he's crowned, which he is going to be crowned as Aegon the 6th. So if Jon is Aegon, which seems dumb to me, but maybe he is, then he would be Aegon the 7th, and he would actually be Rhaegar's true son. So the idea is that those rubies washing up represent Rhaegar's bloodline, and there's one more yet to come. There's one more Rhaegar's son yet to come. We got a fake one, and we got a real one.
Yeah.
So.
I think if
It's
fAegon
not
were to
Jaqen.
rise,
Oh my God, it's not Jaqen. I love you. I do love you, Theory of Ice and Fire, but it's not Jaqen. Go ahead, Tim.
if fAegon is to get one of the dragons, even if just for a little bit, I would have to put my money on Rhaegal. There's too much setup for Viserion to be the one that Euron steals. And the idea of Viserion turning cloak on Dany for fAegon, then to turn cloak again, that's too many turnarounds for this dragon. Rather, it seems that Rhaegal would bond with the fake son of Rhaegar, then when he's taken out, bond with the real son of Rhaegar.
I think that's what I was thinking of just as you were saying, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, like he rides on Rhaegal. There's got to be some sort of dance action for it to be a dance, and I wonder, I Dany might let him try to bond with a dragon. Like, I really think George is going to create a situation where they're talking to each other and trying to suss each other out. It's going to be fascinating to read. And I could definitely see her giving fAegon a chance to bond with the dragon as a way of proving that he's real, you know?
Yeah. That's what I see happening is either it burns and eats him and we get a Silver Dennis situation, a repeat of Quentin, or it bonds with him. But then you give this kid a dragon and now he's going to think he's a god and he might be flying far. Now it's like, okay, never mind. Hey, this whole thing about us being joint rulers, no. I got a dragon now and I'm a man and you're a woman. And so we're going to do things my way. That could be how it plays out.
So then, okay, so this is, I think would be very interesting, which is basically means that it's possible. You know, like if it could make a compelling story, then it's something that the author could be, playing with. The other possibility for fAegon getting a dragon is that potentially him and Euron become aligned somehow, which means that Euron will be trying to use fAegon. I think this is less likely, but do you see a way that could happen?
If it were to happen, it'd be another Band of Nine situation, which I had said. Euron would ally with fAegon, but the entire time he's waiting for the moment of when can I stab you in the back.
That could make sense. And then so he might be the one so maybe he does get Viserion and then Euron steals Viserion from him with the horn or something. I don't think that's the way it's going, but
yeah, maybe the Kraken. Maybe it's not dragon versus dragon at all. Maybe the Kraken takes out the dragon because again, the Kraken-dragon combinations are what give us Cthulhu for our Lovecraft connections.
Yeah. So and it could be that the Dance of Dragons title is actually referring to Euron and Dany fighting eventually, and it's just a long setup. But it really seems like it's talking about fAegon and Dany, because this is the book where fAegon's introduced and invades Westeros. So,
yeah. Well, I guess it stems from your opinion on, does fAegon have Night's King imagery, or is he more a Solar King? Because we know that Jon has it. Jon will be like ice turning into fire. Euron has Night's King, a lot of Night's King symbolism, and Dany's got a lot of the solar stuff. Is fAegon more Night's King or more Solar King?
FAegon is like Jon. He starts off icy with all the blue and being from Tyrosh, and then he washes out the dye and becomes a dragon. So yeah, I think he's mirroring Jon, and also Connington does the same thing. Where he's hiding his red hair, he's hiding his fire, and then he's letting it out. And also he's the Griffin Reborn, like the Dragon Reborn. And then the other thing is Connington has a red wolf cloak. So that's like a fiery wolf, a fiery version of a wolf symbol. So what's that? That's Jon, a Targaryen wolf. So I feel like it's all parallel with Jon as far as a dragon waking out of the snow. He's just kind of like the fake Jon.
And then, of course, the blue dye is also more Blackfyre connections. Young Griff's story is that he dyes his hair blue in honor of his Tyroshi mother, because the Tyroshi dye their hair all crazy colors. Going back to Daemon Blackfyre, his wife, Rohan of Tyrosh, would be the mother of Blackfyres.
Yes, sir. So, just to make this clear, we've got this Mummer's Dragon passage, okay? The phantom shivered through the murk, images in indigo. Viserys screamed as molten gold ran down his cheeks and filled his mouth. And let me just actually set this up. We're all familiar with these visions. What I want you to pay attention is that all the different people Dany's going to interact with are referred to here. Euron, Jon, fAegon, Victarion. Okay, so Viserys screamed as a molten gold ran down his cheeks. A tall lord with copper skin and silver gold hair stood beneath the banner of a fiery stallion, a burning city behind him. That's Rhaego, what never was. Rubies flew like drops of blood from the chest of a dying prince as he sank to his knees in the water and murmured with his last breath. Murmured a woman's name. That's Rhaegar dying. Glowing like a sunset, a red sword was raised in the hand of a blue-eyed king who casts no shadow. That's Stannis. A cloth dragon swayed on poles amidst a cheering crowd. From a smoking tower, a great stone beast took wing, breathing shadow fire, mother of dragons, slayer of lies. So those are the main two there, okay? A cloth dragon swayed on poles amidst a cheering crowd. A cloth dragon is the Mummer's Dragon. And somewhere else, it's Quaithe says, beware the Mummer's Dragon. So the House of the Undying and Quaithe's vision are giving the same idea, that there is this Mummer's Dragon. If she sees it as a cloth dragon and she hears it, Quaithe say, Mummer's Dragon. That is obviously fAegon because Varys and Illyrio are mummers, and fAegon is a fake dragon. So he's a Mummer's Dragon in two different ways. And the cheering crowd, we can see how that's shaping up because he's set up to take Westeros from Cersei, just like Tyrion suggested. Cersei's ripe for the plucking. The throne is right for the plucking. And so he's in the middle of doing that. So the idea that this is a lie that has to be slain tells us that Dany's going to expose it somehow. The question we have is, what about this second line? From a smoking tower, a great stone beast took wing, breathing shadow fire. It sounds like it's talking about Euron calling a dragon to the top of the high tower. However, shadow fire sounds like Blackfyre, and a stone beast could be grayscale. Connington has grayscale. So, and what do you make of these two lines being next to each other? Is the second line a double reference? Is it about Euron? Is it about fAegon and Jon Con? What do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely a double reference. It's George blurring the lines again so that when these events do occur, we're going to look back on this and ask ourselves, which one did he mean? Because I've been watching, shout out to another creator, Crowfood's daughter, her Euron videos where she's posited the idea that Euron is the third head of the dragon, that the dragon must have three heads, but the third head is actually an evil head representing this evil Azor Ahai. So for me, I actually like that idea. So I think that it applies more to Euron than it does fAegon. But again, it's leading George us to question. And that's why we have, again, this setup of 4 riders, but 3 dragons. There's not enough to go around. So someone is going to have to be ruled out eventually. We're just still questioning which one is it. It's either going to be fAegon or Euron.
Yeah, I think we've both been on that train for a long time. I've thought it was Euron for a long time as well. I can't even remember. I've definitely gotten some ideas from Crowfood's daughter. I can't remember which one is which, but yeah, I totally agree with that. And you can just see him. I mean, he's turning himself into Azor Ahai. Like, he's literally doing it. So, But yeah, so you think this is a double reference?
Yeah. In the way that I called Drogo and the Dothraki a false flag for fAegon, fAegon in himself could be a false flag for Euron, and Euron being the bigger head, the third head.
Yeah, that makes sense. fAegon foreshadows Euron and Jon in different ways. My question is, if this is all referring to Jon Con and fAegon, what's the tower? So the Stone Beast is Connington with grayscale. Taking wing means he's probably spreading the grayscale. The Blackfyre, breathing Blackfyre. Jon Connington is breathing the Blackfyre Rebellion. Like, he's breathing life into it. He's powering it forward very much. What's the Smoking Tower?
That's
King's Landing?
Oh,
Storm's End?
Stony Sept, the Bell Tower, Battle of the Bells.
Did it get burned?
No, remember, Jon Con refused to burn it. That's how Robert got away. He did not use He didn't use scorched earth tactics at Stony Sept. That's where the Battle of the Bells took place.
Oh, that's why he's a stone beast, too. Okay, I like that. I think there will still be a smoking tower somewhere. What about Storm's End? It's basically a tower.
Yeah, but it's not. It doesn't work in the because even if you check the wiki, the accompanying a picture of the Battle of the Bells is a man in a tower ringing a bell. So burning the bell tower has better symbolism for that.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying they're not going to go back there and actually burn it, and it never burned. So I'm just saying I'm looking for an actual burning tower somewhere along the way.
Yeah, well, the high tower being. That's more Euron, but Hightower lighting the flames green at the top, the wildfire imagery. Will Euron light the flame at the top of the Hightower when he...
Right, so reading that for Euron, it's easy to figure out that's the Hightower. Reading it for fAegon, maybe it's just talking about the Stony Sept, and I do like that interpretation.
Well, if we go by the... I know it's bad to go by the show, but going by that, King's Landing would have its own bell tower to ring, so it could be the one at King's Landing. Where Jon Con does to King's Landing what he did not do to Stony Sept. That could be it.
They're going to pull some trick to take Storm's End. Not sure what it is. I would watch out for something burning there, perhaps, but otherwise it'll probably be in King's Landing.
Storm's End is supposed to be taken by Guile. That's the line, and that's what made me think about Edric Storm, because also we get the line that the Golden Company fleet is scattered by a storm in Lys. Edric Storm is hiding out in Lys when they smuggle him away from Stannis. So the idea, when I brought up like all of fAegon having his crew of knockoffs, like Arthur, like Gerald Dane, Darkstar as his fake Arthur Dane, Arian Martell as his fake Elia, then bringing Edric Storm in makes him a fake Baratheon. For his namesake of Aegon the Conqueror, Edric Storm could be a fake Orys Baratheon, and it heals, just like fAegon marrying Dany is supposed to heal the rift of Targaryen and Blackfyre. Bringing in Edric Storm would be a way of symbolically healing the rift of Targaryen and of House Targaryen and House Baratheon by the son of Rhaegar allying with the bastard son of Robert Baratheon. Like, keep an eye on Edric Storm.
Yeah, so the thing about interpreting this for Jon Con is the combination of the stone beast, because Jon is a griffin, and a griffin is specifically like a beast. It's a bunch of different animals, and he's turning to stone. So he's a stone beast for sure, is a good interpretation of that. And then the shadow fire, like what would you call black fire? Fire usually gives light. Black fire is an inversion of that. So shadow fire is talking about some very similar concept. So it really does seem like it could apply to either. And the sentence before is definitely talking about fAegon. So that's why I said it's worth considering. But
yeah,
it's prophecy. It's tricksy,
Yeah. Oh, and to lend more credence to Edric Storm being what allows fAegon to take Storm's End, we got to remember Courtney Penrose. The reason he's murked by a shadow baby is because he refuses to give up Edric. And Edric was staying there even when Renly was in charge. So it's implied that the castle garrison at Storm's End, they love that kid. So fAegon producing Edric Storm and that being the way, and Edric like basically handing him the keys, the way the Tyrells handed the keys to the Conqueror, so to speak. makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so of course the Blackfyres take their name from the sword Blackfyre, and the sword Blackfyre is named after the black fire that the black dragons breathe. Aegon the Conqueror and the Targaryens having had Balerion since Valyria. So that's how that happened.
Yeah. Oh, and then common right. Can a gargoyle take place for a stone beast? Yes, because a stone griffin would be a gargoyle.
Yeah, definitely. So a stone beast, that could be Tyrion, but just the rest of it doesn't really fit Tyrion. From
No.
a smoking
Even,
tower, a stone
yeah.
beast took wing. I mean, maybe we could think about Tyrion riding a dragon, but
Well, when Tyrion first meets Griff, the line he drops this line about horses with wings, pigs with wings. Then he looks at Griff and he goes, "Lions with wings." Now you can play that off as Tyrion poking fun at his own sigil, but a lion with a wing with wings would be a griffin.
no, that's
So it
how he
starts.
intends it. He's poking. He's
Yeah.
saying to Jon Con, "I know who you are."
I
Yeah.
know who you like. He figures out Jon Con pretty quickly.
So I really can't think of a way that it makes sense for Euron and fAegon to end up on the same side. Because I think Euron's going to crown himself king at Old Town, and Faagon's going to crown himself king in King's Landing. So I don't really think they have much ground for compromise. They can't marry each other. Westeros isn't that gay. And
I
so
think it's going to be a. I think it's going to be a double whammy for Westeros because Euron's going in at Old Town on the west side. FAegon landing at Storm's End on the east side. This is in the Savas game of trying to trap the king. Cersei in the middle in King's Landing. And then, of course, all the stuff in the north going on. Cersei is getting flanked from all sides. I think that's what's going on.
I also like Tyrion picking up the Syvas pieces because he probably will be picking up the mess after whatever happens between Dany and fAegon.
And then you've got the Dornish spear, everyone wanting Doran Martell to rally the spears. So from the south, the Dornish spears poking up from the Red Mountains. Yeah, it's King's Landing is surrounded. I think that's the gist. From all four directions.
So I think that pretty much, yeah, I think the more interesting plot line here is Dany getting to King's Landing and parlaying with fAegon and having them try to, like I said, feel each other out and ascertain what's going on with each other. And fAegon being given a chance to try to ride a dragon. I think that makes a lot of sense.
But what we're getting right now is Arianne trying to do that. She's the one, Arianne Martell is trying to parlay with fAegon at Storm's End. Meanwhile, we got two sand snakes. Again, spears coming from the south. We got Tyene and Lady Nym heading to... Tyene's supposed to... Lady Nym is supposed to represent Doran at King's Landing because he's been offered a small council seat. And Tyene is supposed to ingratiate herself with the High Sparrow.
Yeah, they're going to be ready to pull some absolute chaos in King's Landing when it's time for the fAegon invasion. I do think fAegon and Arianne are going to be allied, at least for a while. That seems clear to me. So, And also Dorne is involved in this Blackfyre Rebellion. And so it kind of makes sense that they are once again aligned with the king in King's Landing. But then there's a whole another force. So I guess that lines up.
And the biggest Dornish supporters of Blackfyres were House Ironwood, which are the ones who have fostered Quentyn.
So yeah, it's not gonna. And you think Ariane's isn't gonna survive because of the
seven snake
stew or
stew.
whatever.
Yeah, I think seven Martells are lined up to die, and Quentyn was the first snake in the pot.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't surprise me. Cool. Well, I think this is probably a good place to stop. Like I said, I would like to do a follow-up stream and read a couple of Jon Con chapters to get into his story a little bit. But I think we've pretty much categorized what's going on here. I mean, there's an update. They're landing. They're landing on the coast. They're making progress. King's Landing is slow to hear about it.
Mm-hmm.
This is like Winds of Winter sample chapter stuff from the Arion chapters. But it seems like everything is going well. The friends in the Reach are going to pop at some point. And yeah, there's the cheering crowd that's going to greet fAegon is in King's Landing.
Yeah.
So we do know that he's going to take the city. And then it's just a matter of when Dany's going to get there.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and like we said, if Dany takes him down, if Euron takes him down, the perfect storm is brewing, and Euron is our storm god avatar in so many ways. But that's a whole, we've had that talk before. Go back and watch the Ironborn streams if you want to get more on what I mean with that.
Yeah, we're gonna come back to Euron in a couple weeks. Actually, I've got something planned for a stream, so I'll have you back on for that. But I'm gonna keep that under wraps
Someone's
for
asking
now.
about LRS the Sphinx. Yeah, because that's another Sorel. If Alaris is Sorella Sand, and that's another sand snake out in the world who's gonna get caught up in a lot of this stuff. But that's more on the Euron side of things.
I like the idea. I think I came up with it. I don't think I got it from somewhere, but that Sorella is going to help Sam escape or survive the coming madness. So
yeah, Sorella or Alaris, however you want to refer to them, but them and Sam, they need to become like a duo. There needs to be like and with some Marwyn the Maid shenanigans going on. I could totally see them teaming up.
now I do have a new Euron Leighton Hightower theory that I'm keeping under wraps. So I've told Tim about it. I'll get that to you in a couple weeks, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here. So make sure you're subscribed to Grey Waste Tim. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel if you're not. If you want a cool t-shirt, check out the bonfire link below. And look for that Harrenhal video this Thursday from me. And with that, I will bid you adieu. Thank you very much for coming out. I do appreciate y'all very much.
Mm-hmm.
And so does Tim.
Of course, thank you for having me. Thank you for listening to me ramble, and anyone who liked the tinfoil that I started weaving. There's always, go check out my channel for more of that.
Absolutely. Definitely do that if you have not. The lies and citrus is the shit. That's a great video. So, cool.
Somebody yelled at me for saying I spoiled too many series, and I'm just like, this movie is 50 years old, and The Sopranos ended 15 years ago. How long do we have to wait before something's still considered a spoiler?
Yeah, not that long. It's fine. Don't worry about it. All right, guys. I'll see y'all later.
Yep.